She married for protection. What she entered instead was a textbook trauma bond inside a narcissistic empire. Elena's wedding night is the perfect psychological breakpoint. Acute loss, extreme dependency, physical isolation, and a new authority figure taking total control the moment her husband dies. Marcus does not simply protect her, he contains her. Meanwhile, the dead husband Adrian becomes the symbol of failed idealism, and the family itself reveals a classic pathology. Loyalty enforced by fear, love weaponized as leverage, and betrayal punished through spectacle. What makes this story chilling is not the violence, it is how quickly Elena learns that power can feel safer than freedom.
The waltz had just begun when Elena Varley's white gown was brutally baptized in blood. She married Adrian, the gentle heir to the city's most feared syndicate, believing he was her escape from a world of shadows. It was a fatal miscalculation. He died in her arms, a casualty of the violence that gate-crashed their wedding. True terror, however, arrived when his scarred, ruthless brother Marcus stepped over Adrian's body. His eyes held not grief, but a possessive fire as he uttered 5 words that shattered her world. "You are mine now." To understand how Elena survives where love is a loaded gun, one must witness the bloody conclusion. The Varley mansion, a veneer of sophistication, would soon reveal itself as a 5-star slaughterhouse. The estate was a gallery of curated perfection, from its marble pillars and crystal chandeliers to its unnaturally beautiful gardens. It was here, only 3 months earlier, that Elena, holding Adrian's arm, had bought into his promise of safety, his family a fortress against the life she fled. She forced herself to believe the illusion, silencing the warning sirens in her soul. Now in the bridal suite, her gown pooled like spilled cream as she faced her reflection. The dress alone cost more than her mother's annual salary. The diamonds at her throat were painfully real. The smile she practiced, however, was a complete fabrication. "You are breathtaking," said Maria, the elderly attendant, her hands soft as she fixed the veil. But Elena saw a deep sadness in the woman's eyes, the look reserved for a sacrifice, not a bride. "Thanks," Elena whispered, feeling more like a bartered commodity than a beautiful woman. The Varleys needed a bride with a spotless reputation, an outsider for a legitimate front. Adrian needed a wife to please his father, and Elena needed sanctuary from the cartel that had killed her own father and was now hunting her. She had justified the deal as a contract of mutual benefit. Adrian had played his part perfectly, a convincing suitor through formal dinners and rehearsed conversations during their short engagement. His kind eyes and easy smile were a world away from the predatory men she knew. "I realize this isn't what you dreamed of," he admitted one night. "But I will be good to you, Elena, I promise." With no other choice, she decided to take his word for it. A knock on the door made her flinch. "It is time," Maria announced gently. Elena's hand shook as she picked up her bouquet of white roses, every detail engineered to create an image of purity. A perfect deception. The ceremony itself passed in a surreal fog. The estate's ballroom had been made into a fantasy of white blooms, gold trim, and a sea of candles that felt like an inferno waiting to happen. Hundreds of guests filled the room, politicians and moguls whose smiles were all teeth. The Varley family commanded the front rows, presiding like royalty. In contrast, Elena's side of the aisle was glaringly empty. She had no family left to invite, and no friends who would dare attend a Varley function, except a few distant relatives there from obligation. At the altar, Adrian was the image of a gentleman. As she reached him, he squeezed her hand with gentle reassurance. "You are doing perfectly," he breathed. The officiant began speaking, but Elena heard nothing. Her gaze was locked on the man behind Adrian, his best man, his brother, Marcus Varley. She had met him only once at a family dinner where he had stayed silent, his dark, unreadable eyes assessing her as others talked. Adrian explained Marcus handled the family's security in the shadows, a clean word for their violent work. Where Adrian was handsome, Marcus was a creature of sharp edges and raw power, taller, broader, with a face that looked like it was cut from stone and then broken. A white scar cut a path from his left eyebrow down to his jaw. His suit was perfectly tailored, but he wore it like a cage. The way he looked at her held no admiration, no curiosity. Marcus looked at her like she was a problem he was about to eliminate, or a fatal flaw he had to correct. Elena tore her gaze away, forcing herself to focus on Adrian as they said their vows. His voice was steady, almost sincere. For the kiss, he leaned in carefully, as if she were made of glass. The guests cheered, the music started, the transaction was done. She was now Elena Varley, property of a lethal dynasty. The reception began immediately. Champagne flowed while a string quartet played a delicate score for forced smiles and empty conversations. This was no marriage. It was a contract signed before a crowd. Elena kept a smile on her face until her muscles ached, shaking countless hands and forgetting names instantly. The congratulations she received were as hollow as the glasses they toasted with. Adrian stayed by her side, playing the part of a devoted husband, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. His eyes constantly swept the room like a man expecting an explosion. "Are you okay?" Elena whispered in a quiet moment. "I'm fine," he answered too quickly. "So many people. It's hard to watch all of them. It's the security, isn't it?" He looked surprised she had noticed. "My father invited some business partners who aren't on good terms. It's under control. Marcus has men everywhere. Nothing will happen." But the white of his knuckles on his glass suggested he was reassuring himself. Elena's gaze followed his across the room. Near the entrance stood Marcus, a figure carved from darkness, his eyes doing a methodical scan of the guests. He was a predator sorting through threats, every muscle tight with readiness. Then, for a split second, his eyes met Elena's. The force of his stare was a physical jolt. It wasn't desire. She was sure of that. It was something much darker, more complicated. Maybe it was anger or even resentment, like she was to blame for a sin she had yet to commit. She was the first to look away. "Dance with me," Adrian asked, holding out his hand. "The first dance. Another photo op, I suppose." Elena let him lead her to the floor. The music shifted to a waltz and Adrian pulled her close, just enough to look romantic for the cameras while keeping a careful distance. His hand was light on her waist. "You're doing wonderfully," he said as they moved. "I know this isn't easy." "It's fine," Elena lied. "After tonight, things will get simpler. We'll find a routine." "I meant what I promised. I will take care of you." She desperately wanted to believe him. She clung to the hope that this fake marriage could work, that some kind of life was possible here. They moved with the music. The floor became a blur of other couples, a mix of fake smiles, worried businessmen, and whispering women. And with every turn, she saw Marcus on the periphery, always watching, always judging. "Why does your brother hate me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Adrian's rhythm faltered. "What?" "Marcus doesn't hate you. He looks at me like I don't know, like I've personally wronged him." "Marcus looks at everyone like that. Don't take it personally." But his voice was strained. "He is protective. He doesn't trust people easily. Give him time. Time? As if time could change the way Marcus's gaze burned through her, as if she were a mistake to be erased. The music crescendoed. Adrian spun her gracefully. For a tiny second, Elena almost believed the illusion. A bride, her husband, safe. Then the first gunshot tore through the music. It came from near the doors. It was a sharp crack that cut through the sound of violins and talk. For a moment the room froze, as if everyone wished the sound away. Then a scream broke the silence, and the ballroom descended into chaos. Adrian's hand clamped on Elena's wrist, pulling her down as more shots rang out. They hit the marble floor amid the sound of shattering glass and panicked screams. Elena couldn't see the shooter, only a blur of running figures and falling bodies. "Stay down," Adrian yelled, trying to shield her. But then his body convulsed, and his grip on her wrist went limp. A red stain bloomed on his white shirt, spreading with a sickening speed. Adrian. He became a dead weight, a final, crushing embrace. His eyes were wide with a question he would never ask. "Adrian!" Elena's arms wrapped around him, his blood soaking her dress with a terrible warmth. A wet whisper escaped his lips. "No, no, Elena, run!" She would not. "I am not leaving you." He repeated the word, his voice weaker. "Run." The focus left his eyes. There was so much blood. Elena pressed her hands to the wound, a useless act against the inevitable, because she knew the look of death. The wedding music kept playing as the light faded from Adrian's eyes, and he was gone. In an instant, the veneer of decorum is obliterated by a cacophony of slaughter. Gunshots crack, shrieks pierce the air, and champagne flutes shatter like hollow vows. Elena stands frozen amid the chaos, a statuette of shock in a maelstrom of death. The lifeblood of her new husband blossoms across her gown, staining her hands, her soul. A brutal grip, promising a dark bruise, yanks her from the trance. She looks into the eyes of Marcus. His face is smeared with blood, his tuxedo shredded, yet his stare is a dead calm that reflects none of the horror. "Release me," she whispers, a useless resistance. His grasp tightens. "You have to get up. Now." Then, the three words that atomize her universe. "Adrian is gone, and so are you if you stay." It is not an option, but an ultimatum as he drags her from Adrian's body, away from the grand hall, now desecrated into a war zone. Elena's limbs feel alien to her, her savaged gown tangling with every step as Marcus carves a path to a service exit. The ballroom is a canvas of carnage. Birelli's men battle phantoms in masks over the bodies of the fallen. The gilded chamber has become a slaughterhouse. Marcus wrenches open a door, shoving her into a raw, concrete passage where the din of combat fades to a muted, rhythmic thud. "Wait here," Marcus orders, the command silencing the question taking shape on her tongue. He is already pivoting back toward the fray, a pistol appearing from his jacket with practiced lethality. He moves like a hunter, a creature utterly foreign to the man whose brother lies dead. Elena slides down the wall, her frame seized by violent shudders. Her wedding dress is a death shroud painted with the life of Adrian. Her hands will not be still. He is gone. Her kind Adrian, her protector, executed on the night that was to be their beginning. And his brother now returns to that fire, a frightening avatar of vengeance she no longer knows. The gunfire starts to wane. Each second descends into an eternity. Elena clings to the frantic pulse of her own heart, a desperate bid to keep from collapsing. The door is thrown open and she recoils. It is Marcus, handgun still raised, his hands now painted completely in crimson. She cannot guess whose. Is it done? Her voice is a wisp of sound. For the moment. He secures the weapon, his eyes finally landing on her. His gaze is a clinical inventory of her state. The blood-soaked satin, the ceaseless trembling, the tear-ravaged face, as if he were assessing damaged goods. A brief, inscrutable emotion flickers across his face before being extinguished. Can you stand? She nods, a lie she begs her legs to believe. He merely turns and walks, assuming she will follow. She forces her legs to obey, trailing him like a ghost through the hidden veins of the estate. They move past armed men, their faces grim, their clothing torn by the fight. A heavy, wordless truth permeates the air. They arrive at a secluded wing, still lavish but lacking the ballroom's grandeur. Marcus stops at a bedroom door and pushes it open. Elena pauses on the threshold. The room is spacious but austere. A bed, a wardrobe, heavy drapes drawn tight. A gilded prison, ornate and cold. Get inside, Marcus says. It is not a suggestion, but an ironclad decree. She enters and he follows, the door closing behind them with a soft, definitive click. The quiet that descends upon the room is a heavy, smothering blanket. Marcus is the one to tear it, phone to his ear. It is finished. We lost 6, they lost 12. Adrian is dead. His voice is stripped of all feeling, the detached recitation of a battlefield report. No, she is here with me. I have the situation contained. He ends the call, his cold, pragmatic gaze finding her again. Take off the dress. The command is a blade against her skin. What? It is covered in his blood. The bathroom is there. Clean yourself. You will find clothes in the wardrobe. He gives instructions, not solace, to the widow of his brother. I need to see Adrian. No. He is my husband. He was. That one word hangs between them, a cruel, severing blow as he closes the space between them. He lays no hand on her, but his proximity is a crushing weight, stealing the very oxygen from the room. Adrian's body is being dealt with. You will shower, you will change your clothes, and you will stay here until I come back. You can't just imprison me. I can do exactly as I please. His voice lowers, taking on an edge of pure steel. You are a guest in my house, and you are under my protection. You will do as I command. Do you understand me? Elena's throat feels tight. This is not the sorrow of a brother. This is the declaration of a warden. Absolute dominion. She is a subject of his will. Why? She breathes. The faintest trace of what might be grim humor touches his scarred lips. Because you are an asset. Because they will hunt you. Because, welcome or not, you are now a Varelli. He leans in, his voice a low threat. And because I know you will bolt the second you get the chance. I have nowhere left to run. Exactly. Marcus steps back. Shower, change. The windows are wired. There will be a guard on this door. Do not test me. He turns, his hand closing over the doorknob. Marcus, her voice cracks. What will happen now? He pauses, a long, charged silence stretching between them. When he speaks, his tone is quiet, almost reflective. That, he says, the words both gentle and final, is entirely your decision. He leaves, and the sharp sound of the lock engaging is a harsh, definitive final word. For a beat, Elena is perfectly still before her fortitude disintegrates. She crumples to the carpet, the desecrated gown flowing around her as a tempest of grief finally claims her. Adrian was gone. Her bastion, her assurance of peace, her tender love, snuffed out. In his place was Marcus, a fearsome power who saw her as both a pawn and a prize, and who was now her keeper. She had imagined this marriage as her salvation. Instead, it had sprung a far more lethal trap. At last, her weeping subsides. Elena gets to her feet, unsteady but resolved. She knew that collapsing into a ruin on the floor was an indulgence she could not afford. The bathroom was as stark and unwelcoming as the bedroom, offering no comfort. With shaking fingers, she peels off the ruined gown, a second skin of her husband's blood, and lets it drop. In the shower, the water streams scarlet, a hopeless effort to cleanse herself of the proof of Adrian's murder and the specter of their stolen future. She stands there unmoving until the water turns from clear to cold. The wardrobe contains only men's garments, Marcus's. She pulls on the smallest shirt and a pair of trousers. They feel like an annihilation of the bride she had been just hours before. Clad in the uniform of her captor, she sits on the bed to wait, while darkness consumed the world beyond the heavy curtains. Sleep offered her no sanctuary. Only visions of terror that made her start at every imagined sound. The turn of a key in the lock, arriving too late or perhaps far too soon, signals his return. Marcus enters with a tray, a simple meal of a sandwich, an apple, and water. He sets it on the dresser, his expression hidden behind the familiar, unreadable mask of hard control. "Eat," he directs, the word sharp and cold. She does not move. "The men who attacked us?" she asks. "They are neutralized," he answers, his voice an emotional void. "The ones we could find." He takes a post against the far wall, a guard in a clean black shirt and pants, but the stain of the night's violence clings to him like a shadow. "At the ones you could not, they will be found." "Who were they?" she insists. "Do their names change anything?" "Yes." Her hands clench into tight fists, small points of resistance. "Your brother died protecting me. I deserve to know who killed him." When she speaks Adrian's name, a crack appears in Marcus's armor, a flash of agony or fury or both before it is welded shut. "Competitors," he says without inflection. "They assumed a strike during a wedding would send a message. A muscle works in his jaw. They miscalculated. What message? That the Varelli family is vulnerable, overextended." He starts to pace, a caged wolf. "My father's dynasty was founded on fear. Adrian was the acceptable face, a civilized mask for a savage operation." Tonight proved that particular approach to be a catastrophic failure. Elena tracks his predatory circling. "And which are you?" Marcus stops, his eyes locking onto hers. "I am the darkness that allows the family to pretend it lives in the light." "You are the killer." "I am." The confession is bald, unvarnished, and colder than any denial. "Why am I alive? If I was a danger, you would have disposed of me. So what is my function here?" Marcus studies her, a slow, calculating smile touching his mouth, a smile with no warmth. "You are more clever than you let on." "Just answer the question." "You are a chess piece," he replies with brutal clarity. "Your family name carries weight, and you are Adrian's grieving widow. This makes you a target of value for our enemies. Thus, until I decide your next move, you will stay here, where I control all the pieces." "I am a human being, not a piece on your board." "In my world," Marcus closes the distance, his stare boring into her. "Everyone is a piece. You want the truth? Fine. I never approved of Adrian marrying you. I warned him it was a reckless move, that bringing a civilian into our life was an invitation to ruin. But he was stubborn. He insisted you needed our sanctuary, that we had a debt to your father." Elena's breath catches. "You knew my father." Everyone in this life knew Anthony Costa. He worked for us for 15 years before he made the mistake of trying to walk away. Marcus's face becomes granite. Adrian convinced our father to grant him a clean exit, to let him take his daughter and disappear, and in an instant, the fragile veneer of safety was incinerated by the very men he had tried to outrun. The world tilted off its foundation. Are you telling me my father was an asset for the Varellis? He was the architect of our wealth. He knew the source and the path of every dollar. His wanting out made him our greatest threat instead of our greatest advantage. Marcus studied her, his eyes devoid of pity. Adrian was drowning in his own guilt. He thought this marriage was some kind of atonement. I told him it was a fool's hope, that you would become a target for our enemies. Now he is dead, and I have been proven right. Marcus's voice dropped into a cold, flat register. But with his death, his accounts become mine, and that includes his wife. The tremors in Elena's hands began again. The entire story of her life, every memory Adrian had carefully built for her, was an intricate fabrication. Her father wasn't some accountant who died in an accident. He was a pillar of their empire. Adrian's proposal was never about rescue, but about redemption. I want this to be over, she whispered, her voice a thin, brittle thing. No, you offered me your use, so use me. Announce my existence to your rivals. Let them find me. I am done with this life. Marcus moved with an impossible speed. He was a shadow by the far wall, and then his hand was on her throat. Not to choke, but to hold her steady, forcing her eyes to lock with his. You don't have a choice in this, he said, his voice a low growl. Your options vanished when you took my brother's name. For better or worse, you are a Varelli. That name is branded on you now. You can't remove it, you can't run from it. The only decision left is if you will wear it or waste what little time you have left fighting it. Elena held his gaze, her heart hammering against his palm. Why do you care so much if I accept this? For a long moment, Marcus just watched her. His thumb stroked the line of her jaw, a startlingly soft motion that warred with the unyielding strength of his grip. Then he released her, stepping back. Eat. Get your strength back. We decide our next move at first light. He was gone without another word, the sound of the lock sliding home echoing in the silence. Elena stood frozen, a hand pressed to her throat where the ghost of his touch remained. Her mind was a chaotic storm, replaying the awful truths about her father, about Adrian, about the lie that brought her here. She had walked into the Varelli family thinking it was her salvation, but salvation was never on the table. There were only shrinking circles of a gilded cage. And Marcus, the scarred, intimidating Marcus who saw her as both a problem and a prize, was the one holding every single key. Elena pulled the tray closer and forced herself to eat. This wasn't about hunger. It was about armoring herself for the next level of hell. To survive in this savage new world, she had to kill the part of her that was a helpless widow. She needed to become something else. 3 agonizing days passed before Marcus returned. 3 days of silent guards delivering trays, their eyes always looking away. 3 days of staring at the same 4 walls, checking the sealed windows, and hearing the constant muffled beat of patrols. 3 days of Elena pacing the floor like a caged animal, mapping out every impossible escape only to run into the same hard reality. She had even tried the door on the 2nd day. The guard outside had just silently steered her back in. His hand on her shoulder was heavy. Not painful, but it held no warmth. A cold, clear statement that she was property now, not a person. On the morning of the fourth day, the lock clicked and Marcus came in. He looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were bruised with exhaustion. A rough stubble darkened his jaw and a fresh cut sliced across his forehead. But his suit was perfect, his bearing one of absolute control. Whatever fight he'd just been in, he had clearly won. "Get dressed," he ordered, his voice flat. "Pick something suitable. You have 10 minutes. Elena stood up from the bed. "For what?" "The purpose is that I command it." That is not an answer. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You want answers? Fine. Adrian's funeral is in 2 hours. You will be attending. My father wants to see the grieving widow play her part at the graveside, so you will select a black dress, you will say nothing, and you will do exactly as I tell you. Do you understand?" The words struck her with the force of a physical blow. Adrian's funeral? Of course. Lost in the turmoil of her own imprisonment, she had almost forgotten he was dead. Almost forgotten that just 4 days ago, she had held him while his life bled out on a ballroom floor. A hot wave of shame flooded her. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear," she said, her voice small. Marcus just nodded toward the wardrobe. "Look again." Elena opened the closet doors. Next to Marcus's own clothes now hung an assortment of women's garments, mostly dark dresses and funereal attire. Someone had been in her room while she slept. The thought made her skin crawl. She chose the simplest garment she could find, a black, high-necked dress with long sleeves. It was a dress for disappearing, for becoming a shadow in a crowd. Today was about being a ghost, not a centerpiece. 8 minutes, Marcus's voice cut through the quiet. Elena turned. "Can I have some privacy?" "No." "Excuse me." "I don't trust you not to try something stupid. You can change in here, or you can go as you are. It's up to you." A hot flush crept up Elena's neck. "You can't be serious." Marcus just crossed his arms, leaning back against the wall with an air of complete detachment. 7 minutes. The absolute monster. Elena snatched the dress and slammed the bathroom door harder than she needed to. She changed quickly, her hands shaking now with anger instead of fear. When she emerged, Marcus hadn't moved an inch, his expression unchanged. "Shoes are by the door," he said. "We're going." The shoes were simple black heels that fit her. Elena slipped them on and followed Marcus out of the room, taking her first breath of fresh air in 4 days. The hallway beyond was just as sterile and cold as she remembered. Cream-colored walls, expensive art that had no soul, and a thick carpet that swallowed every sound. They walked past other closed doors. Muted voices could be heard from behind a few, but the sounds were indistinct. The Varelli compound was its own sealed universe. She had only seen a small piece of it on her wedding day. Wedding day. The phrase was like ash in her mouth now. Marcus led her down a wide staircase into a large foyer that faced a circular driveway. A line of black cars was already there, a ready-made funeral motorcade. Men in dark suits stood around, their low conversations and cigarettes stopping the moment Marcus appeared. Their eyes all turned to Elena, a collective look of curiosity and contempt. She just lifted her chin and kept walking. Marcus pulled open the rear door of a gleaming black sedan with dark windows. Once she was settled inside, Elena slid across the leather seat. Marcus got in after her, leaving a very deliberate and noticeable space between them. The driver got in without a word, and the car began to move away from the estate. They drove through the city in a thick, heavy silence. Elena stared out the window, watching the blur of the city, seeing people on the sidewalks living their normal lives, unaware that she was trapped inside a moving cage. A wild urge to bang on the glass and scream for help rose inside her. But what good would it do? Nobody helps women like her. Nobody is brave enough to cross the Varellis. "Where is the service?" she asked, mostly just to break the suffocating quiet. "The family crypt, about 20 minutes outside the city." Marcus didn't look at her when he spoke. His eyes were fixed on the world outside, his jaw tight. "Will there be many people?" "Enough. And if they ask me questions, what do I say?" "Nothing." "You won't speak unless I tell you to." Marcus finally turned to face her, his dark eyes like chips of obsidian. "You will stand where I put you. You will cry if you can manage it, but you will not make a scene. That is all." "But I'm his wife. They will expect exactly what I tell them to expect." His voice dropped, laced with a quiet menace. "You seem to have forgotten your situation, Elena. Let me make it clear for you. You are not a widow with choices. You are a problem that I am managing until I figure out what to do with you. You are still breathing only because your death would be more of an inconvenience than your life. Don't make me rethink my calculations." A knot formed in Elena's throat. "Are you threatening my life?" "I'm giving you the facts." Marcus looked back out the window. Adrian's death created a void. Rival houses are circling, looking for any weakness. My father's age is a vulnerability, which leaves holding this empire together on my shoulders. I don't have time for your theatrics. You will play your part, and your cell will remain a bedroom, not a grave. The rest of the drive passed in a tense, oppressive quiet. The family burial ground sat on a hill overlooking the city, fenced in by iron and stone. They reached a private city of the dead, where money buys a final escape from the common herd. The narrow drive was already bottlenecked with luxury sedans. Marcus got out first, playing the part of a gentleman as he opened Elena's door. She took his hand. Refusing would cause a scene she didn't want. His fingers tightened around hers, a clear signal of the power he held over her. The mourners turned as a group to watch them approach. Elena recognized faces from her wedding, officials, business partners, men who likely celebrated Adrian's death in secret. The others were strangers, their eyes fixed on Elena like she was a beautiful train wreck. A freshly dug grave waited, a dark wound in the perfect lawn. The mahogany casket, its sheen a vulgar flaunting of money, sat on brass fittings. The air was heavy with the perfume of white flowers, a scent so cloying it made Elena's stomach churn. Marcus led her to the front, his hand a firm, possessive pressure on her back. In the main chair sat an old man, his silver hair a perfect sculpture of defiance against grief. Elena knew him from photos. Vincent Varley, the man who built a brutal empire. His pale eyes moved from Marcus to her. "She's here, like you wanted," Marcus said. Vincent's stare landed on Elena, invasive and appraising. "You are smaller than I pictured." How does one respond to that? Elena remained silent. "Sit." Vincent motioned to the chair beside him. She did as she was told. Marcus stood behind her, looking less like family and more like a prison guard. The service started, a priest speaking hollow comforts. From ashes to ashes, from dust to dust, the usual words to sanitize a professional hit. Elena heard none of it, her gaze locked on the coffin, trying to connect that object to Adrian, the man who had promised her safety. She knew tears were required, that it was part of the show. It was the widow's role, but her eyes stayed dry. Everything felt blurry, as if she were watching a movie that was meant to be her life. Vincent leaned in, his voice a low conspiracy. Adrian spoke well of you. Elena blinked. Sir? My son. He said you had a hidden strength, that you had survived storms that would destroy other people. Vincent's face was an emotionless mask. Was he right? I couldn't say. You will, he replied, turning back to the priest. The service ended. Guests filed by the casket, giving Vincent their practiced, empty sympathies. Elena watched these predators in their fine suits, wondering how many of them had hoped for Adrian's demise. As the casket started to descend, Marcus's hand found her shoulder. Stand up! Elena got to her feet. The box vanished into the ground, and she waited for the expected feeling, grief, anger, anything. But all she felt was a deep, hollow emptiness where her heart should be. A white rose was pushed into her hand. The message was obvious: purity, sorrow, the facade she had to maintain. Elena dropped it onto the coffin without feeling and turned away. The wake, of course, was at the mansion. The ballroom where Adrian had been killed was now spotless, every sign of the violence scrubbed away. Elena wondered if they had incinerated her blood-soaked wedding gown, or if it was still somewhere in the house. Marcus was her shadow, while people offered false condolences. Most ignored Elena completely, talking to Vincent or Marcus as if she were a decoration. The few who met her eyes did so with icy nods. Mrs. Varley. A man in a gray suit appeared beside her, his smile made of sharp edges. My condolences for your loss. Thank you, Elena said automatically. Robert Chen, he offered. I was a partner of your husband's. A terrible thing. Yes. You must be completely heartbroken. His eyes accused her of lying. If I can help in any way. Before she could answer, Marcus was at her side. Mr. Chen, I don't recall your name on the list. The air around them grew cold. Chen's smile didn't falter. I came to offer my respects. How considerate. Marcus's hand landed on Elena's waist, a clear act of possession. But my sister-in-law is distraught. I am sure you can understand. Of course. Chen's eyes flicked between them, his mind clearly working. We'll speak again, Mrs. Varley. He then slipped back into the crowd. Who was that? Elena asked. Someone who wants something that isn't his, Marcus said, pulling her away. Don't speak to him again. I wasn't planning on it. Your plans don't matter. Stay away from him. Marcus's jaw was set like concrete, his hand still clamped on her waist. In fact, you won't talk to anyone without me there. For how long? For as long as it takes until I decide. Elena pulled free from his grip. I'm not some object to be controlled. No, you're a widow at a funeral, which makes you a prize for every predator in this room looking for an opening. Marcus grabbed her wrist before she could step back. I understand you're angry. I know that fighting me gives you the illusion of power. But I'm the only person standing between you and 100 ways to die. So you will swallow your pride, you will stay by my side, and you will not get us both killed. His grip wasn't painful, but it was absolute. Elena looked in his eyes and saw something flicker behind the cold exterior. Maybe real concern, maybe cold calculation. With Marcus, you could never be sure. Fine, she forced herself to say. He let go of her wrist, but stayed close. 2 more hours, then this whole charade is over. Time dragged on. Elena was tethered to Marcus, a silent figure in an endless line of condolences. She played the part of the grieving widow with a practiced smile and sad nods. The entire time she watched, She saw Marcus size up every person who came near, saw the tension in his body when anyone got too close. She watched Vincent hold court in the room, taking sympathies like a king taking tribute. She saw the guards at every exit, their hands near their hidden firearms. This was not a wake. It was a war council in funeral clothes. When Marcus finally led her to the car, Elena's face ached from faking her grief and her feet were on fire. The moment the door shut, she kicked off her shoes and closed her eyes. "You played your part well," Marcus noted as the mansion disappeared behind them. Elena's eyes snapped open to see him watching her. "I stood still. That's not a hard thing to do." "You'd be shocked how many can't manage even that." He loosened his tie, his first relaxed move all day. "My father was impressed. Should I be honored? You should be careful." Marcus sank into the leather seat. "Vincent is not a man who is easily pleased. That he even spoke to you was important. He asked if Adrian was right about me. What did he mean?" Marcus paused for a long second. "Adrian thought you could survive, that you had a toughness that wasn't obvious. My father wanted to see for himself. And he saw someone who didn't fall apart under duress, someone who could exist in this world." Marcus's eyes held hers. Whether that turns out to be a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. A thick quiet filled the car. Elena watched the city lights blur in the window, her mind a storm of the day's events. The service, the reception, the circling sharks with their fake smiles and real menace. She had gotten through the day, but just barely. How many more days like this could she survive? Back at the estate, Marcus took her to her room, her cage, and she heard the lock click. Elena tensed, thinking he would push her inside and leave. Instead, he came in with her, shutting the door. Her heart started to pound in her chest. "What are you doing? We have to talk." Marcus went to the window, checked the latch, then scanned the room as if he were looking for bugs. "Sit down. I've been sitting all day." "Elena." Her name was a sharp command. "Sit." The order was quiet but final. She obeyed, sitting on the bed's edge, her fingers twisting. Marcus paced like a caged wolf, a darkness in his expression she had never seen before. "The wedding," he started, then stopped himself. "It was not a random hit. You said it was business rivals." "They were," he agreed, "but they had help. They knew the timing, the security routes, Adrian's precise location." His hands tightened into fists. The hit was too perfect. A cold awareness washed over Elena. "You're saying someone on the inside was involved?" "Yes." "Who?" "That," he said, turning to face her, "is what I need you to figure out. I want to know everything Adrian ever told you. Every last detail, his ledgers, his allies, his aspirations. He was a stranger to me. Our betrothal lasted 2 months. He was absent for most of them. Our talks were never deep." "Then give me what you know," Marcus demanded, swinging a chair around to sit astride it. "From the beginning." The memory was a fresh scar she refused to touch, but his stare was absolute. "He found me at the diner where I worked. He took a table in my section for 3 days before speaking." "And his first words?" "He asked if I knew who he was. I said I didn't. I think that intrigued him." Elena recalled, the moment sharp and agonizingly clear. She had sensed a deep-seated loneliness in Adrian, one that his tailored suits and effortless charm couldn't hide. He told her his name and asked her for a date. She declined, writing him off as another rich man seeking a brief amusement. But he came back the next day with flowers, and he asked her again. "And so you agreed?" "Not right away," she countered, but there was a surprising gentleness to him, and he was tenacious. He never once made me feel trapped. A tightness formed in Elena's throat. "I finally said yes to one dinner. That became two. After our third, he told me the truth about his life." Marcus's expression was a perfect mask. "And what did you do?" "I tried to walk away. I told him I wanted no part in that kind of world." A brittle laugh escaped Elena's lips. He swore he understood, that he wanted out as well. He talked of creating a life free from all of it. His plan for this new life was? Clean investments, real estate, technology, businesses that weren't built on shadows, she motioned vaguely. "Crime," Marcus said, his tone utterly flat. "Exactly, and you trusted him." I needed to trust him. Elena's gaze locked with his, full of raw honesty. "My father was gone. The men who took him were now after me. I had no one. When Adrian proposed a marriage of protection, I took it. The only other choice was a shallow grave somewhere." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Perhaps compassion, or just the acknowledgement of sheer, cornered desperation. Did Adrian ever mention any kind of pressure? Anyone making threats? Elena searched the thin catalog of their discussions. No, his work was a vault. He kept that part of his life sealed away from me. Think about the week before the wedding. Did anything seem wrong? He was wound incredibly tight. I chalked it up to nerves, but a memory sparked for Elena. The night before, he came to my room. He said he had to tell me something important. Marcus leaned forward, his attention a laser. "What was it?" He was interrupted. A call came in, and he had to leave suddenly. He promised we would finish our talk after the ceremony. Her voice dropped to a faint whisper. That conversation never happened. Marcus shot to his feet, pacing the floor like a caged animal. Someone knew that assault was coming. They either kept quiet or gave him a warning he decided to ignore. But why would he ignore a threat like that? To prove his own damn theory, Marcus snapped, his voice hard with old arguments. Adrian truly believed in redemption, that words could solve what bullets couldn't. He wanted to transition the entire family into a legitimate corporation. That sounds admirable. It sounds suicidal, Marcus shot back, pausing to glare at the window. This world doesn't reward admiration. It rewards power, fear, and the resolve to do what is necessary. Adrian knew the rules of our life, but chose to believe in a better way. That belief is what got him killed. A thick silence filled the room, weighted by the grief Marcus hid and the rage he barely controlled. I knew him for such a short time, Elena said gently, but he showed me nothing but kindness. That must count for something. It counts for nothing to a dead man. His reflection was a ghost in the dark glass. Kindness is a liability we can't carry. Then what can you carry? He turned, and his eyes were so fierce they stole the air from her lungs. Survival, power, and making sure my brother's killers have very little time to celebrate. You're going to hunt them all down. And I'm going to erase their entire world and poison the ground it was built on. His voice was so calm it was terrifying, making the vow feel like a foregone conclusion. Anyone who helped them, who knew and said nothing, who profited from Adrian's murder, they will all burn in the same fire. Elena should have been horrified by his cold-blooded purpose. Instead, a grim corner of her soul felt a dark rightness in it, that a balance would be restored. "How long will this war of yours take?" she asked. As long as it takes. Marcus started for the door. Until then, you stay in this house. You are not to be seen, and you keep yourself out of my way. Wait. Elena stood up. You can't just keep me locked up. I can. Marcus? He spun on her with a swiftness that made her recoil. Do you have any idea what they'll do if they find you? The men behind Adrian's murder, the wolves circling his empire, even our own people who see you as a loose end. His voice sank to a dangerous hush. They will break you for what you know, Elena. They will trade you like property or kill you just to send a signal. The only reason you're still breathing is because I have you where they can't touch you. So I'm your prisoner for my own safety. That's right. That isn't living. That's just a more drawn-out way to die. Marcus's jaw went rigid. Do you want the faster way? The threat hung in the air between them, sharp as glass. Elena met his stare, refusing to back down. I want a say in my own destiny, she stated, her voice soft but unbreakable. For a long, tense beat, Marcus just watched her. Then he turned to the door. You don't have a say anymore. The faster you learn that, the easier this will be on you. He left, and the sound of the lock sliding home was like a final judgment. Elena stood alone, her fists shaking with helpless fury. All day she'd played the part of the grieving bride, standing by Marcus and Vincent as rivals offered empty condolences. But grief wasn't what was choking her. It was the crushing weight of this opulent prison, the knowledge she'd only traded one death sentence for another. She would not let this be her end. She couldn't just wither away in this room while Marcus controlled her fate. Elena went to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Beyond it, the grounds were swallowed by darkness. Freedom was right there, past the sealed panes, the armed guards, and the man who held her leash. It was not impossible. She just needed to find a way to take it. The next morning, a guard delivered her breakfast on a tray that held a newspaper. Elena almost pushed it aside. What did the world matter to her now? But starved for anything new, she started to scan the page. The headline made her blood run cold. Varley wedding massacre leaves 12 dead. Rival family suspected. Underneath was a photograph of the estate, crawling with paramedics and patrol cars. A smaller picture showed Adrian at some charity event, his smile utterly carefree. Elena read the piece from start to finish twice. It was a careful dance of rumor and official statements. An active investigation was in progress. No suspects were in custody. The Varley family was silent, but one line, buried in the final paragraphs, made her gasp. Sources suggest the attack was an inside job, fueling concerns about loyalty within the organization. So Marcus's paranoia had been justified. There was a traitor in their midst. And that person was still walking free, a hidden and unpredictable danger. Elena set the paper down, her eyes on the locked door. Marcus was out there hunting monsters while she was being protected like a fragile heirloom. But what if she could be more than just an object? What if she could prove herself so valuable that he would have no choice but to let her out? The thought was insane, probably fatal. But it was far better than losing her mind in this room. She started to catalog everything. The guards' rotations, the sounds that built a floor plan in her mind, snippets of talk from the hallway. On her 5th day as a captive, the lock turned at an odd hour. Mid-afternoon. Elena's gaze lifted from the page she wasn't reading. Marcus filled the doorway, a man who looked to have clawed his way from the depths of some personal hell. A dark, blossoming stain of blood soaked his shirt, His knuckles were abraded and split. A fresh cut traced his collarbone, and one eye was already purpling shut. He staggered inside, kicking the door closed behind him. "Sweet heavens," Elena breathed. "What have they done?" "Nothing," Marcus grated. He took 3 steps before his legs buckled, sending him crashing into the dresser. In a heartbeat, Elena was there, her hand gripping his arm, arresting his fall. A hospital was essential. Hospitals were impossible. He tried to brush her away to find his own footing, but only swayed. "I just need a second. You're going to need stitches. You're losing too much blood." I said I'm fine. You are the very definition of not fine. Elena pulled a fresh shirt from a drawer, pressing it firmly into the wound on his collarbone. "Hold this." Marcus obeyed, his fingers brushing hers as she pulled away. His skin burned with fever. How much blood had he lost? "Where's the first aid kit?" Elena demanded. "Bathroom under the sink." She found it immediately, its contents suggesting this room often served as a clandestine clinic. After retrieving her kit, she found Marcus collapsed on the bed, his eyelids clenched shut. "Stay with me," she urged, trying. Elena knelt, gently easing away the fabric of his shirt, now a solid canvas of crimson. The gash was clean and deep, the signature of a knife. He needed a surgeon, but she could close the wound and fight off the sepsis. "This is going to burn," she warned. "What doesn't?" Marcus cracked an eye to watch her. "Get on with it." With a steady hand, she began to clean the injury, not recoiling at his sharp hiss of pain. The muscle beneath her touch was like marble, his entire frame a singular, taut vessel of silent agony. "This needs a hospital," she murmured. "Can't." Too many eyes. His breathing grew shallow. "Hospitals mean police. Police mean questions. Sepsis could kill you. It's not the first risk I've taken." Elena started stitching, her hands moving with a confidence her spirit lacked. Her father had imparted this skill, a buried talent from a life she fought to forget. Certain lessons, it seemed, were etched into the soul. "Tell me who did this." Her tone was sterile, a tool to keep him focused. "The ones who took Adrian." Marcus's voice was thick with strain. "I found their sanctuary. My arrival was unwelcome. How many were there? 5, now 4. So you took care of them?" "Most." Elena nodded the last stitch, then turned to his scraped knuckles. "You are a madman." "Possibly." He just observed her, his features a stoic, unreadable facade. "You have a surgeon's touch. My father taught me. He said in his world, the ability to mend a man was an invaluable skill." Elena's fingers stilled over his skin. "I only understood yesterday that his world was the same as yours. Would knowing have changed anything?" She met the question with stark honesty. "No. I still would have chosen Adrian. I still would have wanted the safety he offered. I accepted there was a cost. I just never conceived that cost would be his life." Once his hands were clean, Elena pulled back. "Take off your shirt," she commanded. Marcus responded with only the arch of an eyebrow. "You're bleeding heavily, and I need to check for other injuries," she stated, her tone flat. "Cooperate, or I will let you bleed." He fought his way out of the ruined shirt, every motion a portrait of controlled pain. Elena had to look away from the roadmap of scars that covered his torso. Some faded to silver, others brutally fresh. It was a history of violence written in flesh. She found 2 more gashes, both superficial, and treated them with cold efficiency. As adrenaline fled, a fine tremor began in her hands. Just as she finished, his fingers locked around her wrist. "I'm grateful." Elena held his gaze. You would have survived without me, true, but not without a great deal more suffering. They were frozen in that pose for a long beat, his palm a brand against her skin, his blood smearing her wrist. The room seemed to shrink, the air turning thick. Marcus then let go, pushing himself to his feet. He made it this time, but his stance was unsteady. You need to rest, Elena told him. Out the question. I have matters to attend to. You can barely stand. I've worked in far worse shape. Still, he didn't move toward the door. He stood watching her with that same unreadable gaze from the funeral. What? Elena snapped. You could have just let me die. It would have solved your problem. The thought had never occurred to her. What problem? Me. I am your jailer. If I were gone, you could bargain for your release with Vincent or someone else. Elena faced him in the small space. You think I would watch you die for a chance at freedom? Most people would. I am not most people. A crack appeared in his hardened facade. No, you are not. He left without another word, leaving Elena alone again, with blood on her hands and a torrent of questions. Why come to her room in that condition? He had medics. He had resources, yet he chose to bleed in her cage. And why did some small piece of her feel relieved that she had been there to help? Elena washed her hands, as if the water could rinse away the answer. For 3 days, Marcus was gone. Elena measured her existence by the arrival of meal trays, the slow crawl of sunlight across the floor, and the tread of unfamiliar feet in the hall. It was boredom, she told herself, a desperate search for anything to break the monotony. Yet every turn of the lock sent her pulse hammering with a feeling dangerously close to anticipation. On the 3rd night, the violent crash of glass tore her from a shallow sleep. Elena shot up in bed, her heart a frantic drum. The sound came from the gardens. She crept to the wall, listening. Angry, sharp voices. Then gunfire erupted, short, savage bursts that ripped the fabric of the night. She knew enough about firearms to know this was not a drill. This was an assault. The sharp, metallic tang of cordite was already drifting through the window. Her door flew open. An unfamiliar face in tactical gear grabbed her arm. Come on, move. What's going on? Move! He yanked her from the bed, ignoring her state of undress in just a t-shirt and underwear. His fingers dug into her flesh as he threw her into the chaotic corridor. More armed men sprinted past. Shouted orders echoed from downstairs. The cold marble stung Elena's bare feet as she was dragged down a new hallway into the labyrinthine heart of the estate. They stopped at a reinforced steel door that belonged on a vault. The guard punched in a code and shoved her inside. Stay put. Don't open this door for anyone but me or Marcus Varley, understand? Elena gave a sharp, wordless nod. The door boomed shut, its deadbolts shooting home with sickening finality. She was in a safe room. It was stark and windowless, the walls reinforced, a bare bulb carving shadows from the corners. There was a cot, a small table of supplies, and a phone mounted on the wall. Elena picked up the handset. As expected, the line was dead. Another volley of gunfire erupted, closer now. She could feel it through the thick walls. The staccato of rifles, the roar of shotguns, the furious shouts of men. The whole compound was a war zone, and she was entombed in a steel box, completely blind to the outcome. Time lost its meaning, stretching and snapping. The sounds of combat rose to a fever pitch, then slowly died away. An unnerving silence fell, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breath. Elena sat on the cot and waited. An eternity later, the locks clanked open, the heavy door swung in, framing Marcus in the doorway, his shirt ripped and blood splattered, a rifle held at his side. "You're unharmed," he said. It was a statement, not a question. Elena got to her feet. What happened? Chen made his play. Marcus's voice was hollow with exhaustion. He gambled on the instability after Adrian's death. He sent an army to take this house. Did they succeed? They're all dead. He moved out of the doorway. Let's go. This place is secure, but I want you within my sight. Elena followed him through corridors where a path had been cleared through the dead. Chen's men, she assumed, their blood soaking into priceless rugs. She stepped over them, her mind retreating from the abattoir around her. Marcus brought her to another room, much grander than her own. It was a study with a massive desk, walls of books, and leather chairs. A wall of armored glass looked out over grounds where fires still smoldered. "Whose office is this?" Elena asked. "Mine." Marcus locked the door, setting the rifle down. "Sit before you fall." She was unaware her body was trembling. Elena collapsed into a leather chair as her strength failed. "What were our losses?" "He lost 12. We lost 3. Marcus went to a bar and poured 2 tumblers of amber liquid. He put one in Elena's hand. "Drink it." She did, the whiskey burning a path of warmth through the hold. "So it's over?" "For tonight." Marcus finished his drink in one swallow and poured a second. "Chin is dead. I put the bullet in his head myself, but he won't be the last. Adrian's death created a vacuum, and the whole world knows it now." "How long can you keep fighting like this?" "For as long as it takes." But his voice held a bone-deep weariness that went far beyond tonight's violence. He stood at the window, watching the fires burn, his posture a solid line of tension. Elena watched him in the half-light. His face was a mask of soot and blood. His knuckles were raw, and he favored his side, testing the limits of her sutures. "You need a doctor," she told him. "Later. Marcus, you need—" "Later." He turned from the glass, and the look he gave her stole the words from her throat. "It wasn't anger, it was the look of a man on the edge of an abyss, I have to think. I need to know who's coming next, how to fortify our position, where the next attack will come from. You need to sleep, I'll rest when I'm in the ground." A brittle, sharp laugh broke from him, the sound of a man at his breaking point. Elena set down her glass. "Sit. Just sit down." She used the same commanding voice he'd aimed at her countless times, surprised when he obeyed, slumping into the chair opposite as if his strings had been cut. Up close, she saw the savage price the last week had cost him. The shadows beneath his eyes were stark as bruises. His features were sharper, honed by sleeplessness. He was running on nothing but sheer will and rage. "When was the last time you ate?" Elena's question was a soft murmur. Marcus seemed to search for the memory. "Yesterday, I think." "Sleep?" "A few hours here and there. You can't go on like this. I don't have another way." His voice was a raw, splintered thing. "Every moment I'm not working is a moment our enemies use to sharpen their knives. Every second of rest is just begging for an attack. And if you burn out, what becomes of us? Who stops this world from caving in?" Marcus dragged his hands down his face. "You don't understand how any of this works. Then make me understand." He held her gaze, and in that long moment she watched something harden in his eyes. A choice was made. This family is built on fear and respect in equal parts. My father spent 40 years building it. Adrian was meant to be the respectable face, the one who gave us legitimacy while I handled the bloody business. His death left a power vacuum. Every rival crew, every ambitious lieutenant, every punk with a weapon can feel it. Now, you must project the authority to fill that space. And I have to be so feared that no one even considers making a move. Marcus sank deeper into his seat. It means I can't show a single crack in the armor. I have to become the monster they tell stories about. Elena pictured the bodies in the hall, the crimson on his hands, the ice in his voice when he spoke of killing Chen. You're not a monster. You have no clue what I'm capable of. I know that when you were bleeding, you came to me, not to your soldiers. She pressed her advantage, reminding him he'd had ample chance to kill her, but hadn't. She saw a man running on fumes, trying to hold a crumbling kingdom together while grieving. Then she drove the point home. That isn't something monsters do. Marcus let out a hollow chuckle that mocked her innocence. She met it head on. I'm a realist. Monsters don't feel guilt. You do. He challenged her, demanding proof. So she listed it. His exhaustion, the way he was destroying himself to be their shield. His war over seeing her as a person or a chess piece. She stepped nearer, insisting a real monster would feel nothing. The air in the room grew thick with tension. For the first time, Marcus saw her as more than a piece on his bloody chessboard. He whispered that Adrian was right about the steel in her. Elena replied, "It was a requirement. Where I'm from, the weak are devoured too." His question about her past was a startling shift. No one, not even Adrian, had ever bothered to ask. They were all too busy trying to use her or lock her away to wonder about the person she was before the Varelli name branded her. Poor, she said, her voice flat. My father worked himself to the bone just to keep us fed and sheltered. After her mother died, their world became just the two of them. Her father's lessons were grim. How to fight, how to spot a threat, how to treat a wound, how to vanish. She'd thought he was paranoid, but he was preparing her for the very world he had tried to escape. Do you hate him for it? Marcus asked. Elena weighed the question. Some days I did, but missing him is a deeper wound. He was a broken man who tried to buy her future the only way he knew. By selling his life to the Varellis, he did what he had to for her survival. She paused, then delivered the killing blow. Exactly like you're doing right now. Marcus flinched as if she'd slapped him. He argued the situations were different, but she cut him off. He was also sacrificing his humanity for his family. She pushed him. How is it different? He insisted this life was his choice, unlike the fate forced on her and Adrian. She waved it away. Was it? He was born into this the same as you. A storm of grief, rage, and regret churned across Marcus's face. She revealed another secret. Adrian had once told her he wished he could be someone else, a man who did more than just manage an empire built on fear. When did he say that? Marcus demanded. Our second dinner, she answered. The wine loosened his tongue. The memory stung. He'd said the only good part of being a Varelli was the power to actually help people, to maybe add some good to their family's stained legacy. Marcus shot to his feet, pacing like a caged wolf toward the window. He was a dreamer. It got him killed. Elena shot back. Or traitor killed him, and his dreams had nothing to do with it. But Marcus was resolute. Insisting his brother's romanticism made him soft, made him trust the wrong people and overlook the danger until it was on his doorstep. Marcus faced his own haunted reflection in the dark glass. He argued Adrian's need to see the good in people was what sealed his fate. I and you see a threat behind every door. Because that's where they wait, he snapped. He listed his brutal victories, guiding them through 3 turf wars, 2 federal probes, and countless hits. Adrian's way led to a box in the ground. My way keeps our family breathing. It also sentences you to be alone, exhausted, and one disaster from total ruin, she returned. That was the final straw. He crossed the room in 3 strides, yanking her from the chair. Elena didn't flinch, just met his bruising grip and white-hot fury. You want the truth? His voice was a frayed, dangerous wire. I am one bad day away from burning this entire kingdom to ash. I'm one weak moment from ending my own life because this weight is too damn much to carry. He was holding on by a thread, and the only thing stopping him was knowing everyone who depended on him would fall too. Then let me help you carry it. There's no one, he said. I'm here, the words slipped out, unplanned. I'm not asking you to trust me, but you don't have to face this by yourself. Marcus just stared, his hands still a vice on her shoulders, his breaths ragged. Why would you help me? I've locked you up, treated you like an object, and given you every reason to want me dead. Because, she whispered, you've also protected me. I saw you grieving your brother when you acted like you felt nothing. I've seen the pain you hide under all that armor. Elena's fingers lightly brushed the scar on his jaw, because I know what it feels like to be drowning. For a second, Marcus was frozen, her touch on his skin, his eyes scanning hers for the usual lies and manipulation. Then something inside him finally shattered. His kiss wasn't gentle. It was a raw, desperate crash of mouths. His hands wound into her hair, holding her fast as if terrified she might vanish into thin air. And Elena should have pulled away, should have been disgusted, but instead, she met his frantic energy with her own. It was a beautiful, spectacular, world-ending mistake. This was her dead husband's brother, her captor, a man with blood on his hands. But right then, none of those labels mattered. She just needed to feel something, a real connection to prove she was still alive. Marcus broke away first, breathing hard, pressing his forehead to hers. This is wrong. We can't. I know. But neither moved back. They stood there in the silent office as their world burned down around them and the very foundation between them shifted forever. I never hated you, Marcus breathed. At the wedding, you thought I despised you. I didn't. Elena's heart hammered her ribs, trying to beat its way out. Then what did you feel? I wanted you. The confession was raw, ripped from his soul. I had been watching you for weeks before Adrian even knew you were alive. I followed you from that diner, telling myself it was business. But I knew it was a lie. The confession should have been terrifying. Instead, it made a horrible kind of sense. Why didn't you say something then? Because Adrian saw you first. He staked his claim like you were a trophy. Marcus's laugh was pure acid. And because I knew if I let myself near you, I'd have to keep you. In our world, needing someone is a death sentence. So I gave you to Adrian, pretending it meant nothing. But it did. No, he agrees. I watched him marry you and imagined killing him, taking his place at the altar. His fingers tighten in her hair. Then someone else did the work for me, and my darkest wish became a nightmare. Elena leans back, her eyes searching his. Is that why you kept me locked away? To stay away from me? To keep you safe? To stop myself from doing this? To find out if you were just a fixation or something much more lethal. He lets her go, taking a step back as if the floor had split open between them. As it happens, it is more lethal. What is? Marcus pivots away, his frame rigid. I am not made for this wanting, this caring. It is a fatal flaw. He explains that love makes people targets. Adrian is dead because an enemy knew his loss would destroy Marcus. Should they learn she was more than a pawn, they would come for her. They would make him watch as they took her apart, piece by piece, just to prove they could. His voice was raw with a deep animal terror. I will not let that happen. His confession was a storm in her mind, and she was drowning in it. So Marcus wanted her, watched her, then caged her, all as some warped form of protection. And his kiss was that of a man dying of thirst in the desert. What happens now? She asks, her voice a whisper. Nothing. This moment dies. The cold mask slides back over Marcus's face. You go to your room, I go to my duties. We pretend this never occurred. Just like that? Yes. Just like that. A sharp, bitter laugh escapes Elena's lips. Do you honestly think you can just will this away? Pretend it isn't real? I have been pretending from the first second I saw you, he states, his tone absolute. I can continue. He walks to the door. Come, I am taking you back. But Elena doesn't move. And what if I don't want to pretend anymore? Marcus's hand freezes on the knob. Pretend what? That your kiss felt like nothing? That you're not the only one who has seen me as a person in months? Do not make this harder than it has to be, he says, refusing to meet her eyes. You think this is what you want, but you're wrong. I am not Adrian. I don't have his kindness. I am the monster that hunts the other monsters, and getting close to me will be your end. I'm already at my end, she replies. Your brother died while I held him. I'm a prisoner here. My old life is over. What more is there for you to take from me? Your hope. Marcus finally faced her, the pain in his eyes a physical blow. That's what I'll take. The piece of you that still believes in happy endings. I will poison it, break it until you are as shattered and empty as I am. And you'll hate me for it. You can't know that. Oh, but I can. It's what I do. It's the law of this world. He wrenched the door open. Now let's go before I change my mind. Elena went to the doorway but stopped. You're wrong. About what? About you being a monster. Real monsters don't save people from themselves. She was gone down the hall before he could find the words to answer. Marcus followed, the distance between them crackling with tension, the air thick with the aftershock of their exchange. He unlocked her door, but stopped on the threshold, a guard struck dumb. You should rest, she said quietly. I will, he answered. Her gratitude for his protection blindsided him. Disbelief flickered across his face. He'd braced for anger, not this. He waves it off as his duty. She instantly disagrees, drawing a line between his loyalty to the Empire and his actions tonight. You made a choice to keep me alive, she declared, her gaze steady. And for that, I'm thankful. He gave a single, curt nod before the door shut them apart. The click of the lock was a familiar sound of isolation, but this time the room felt different. Her gilded prison seemed larger, the silence less suffocating, all from one new truth. She wasn't the only one trapped here. Marcus was a prisoner too, shackled to an empire that took everything and gave back only chains. Lying on the bed, she could still feel the ghost of his kiss and heard his words echo. The terror she should have felt at his darkness, his obsession, their tangled fates. It was strangely absent. In its place was a peculiar, charged hope for whatever came next. The morning after was a cold dose of reality. A new guard opened her door. It wasn't the usual silent meal tray, but a direct order. Mr. Vincent Varley wants to see you in his study. A knot of ice formed in Elena's gut. Now. She put on the plainest dress she had and followed him. It was her first chance to see the damage from the attack in daylight. The walls were peppered with bullet holes. Faint crimson stains lingered on the marble floors, defying the harshest cleaners. The gleaming armor of the Varley Empire was starting to show its cracks. Vincent's study was in the oldest part of the house, a space of dark wood, old books, and the stale scent of expensive cigars. The patriarch sat enthroned behind a massive desk, Marcus standing beside him like a stone guardian. Marcus gave no sign of recognition, his face a perfect blank that made Elena's fragile hope wither. The performance had resumed. "Sit down, Elena." Vincent's voice was a low growl, but not unkind. She sat, clutching her hands to stop them from shaking. For a long while, Vincent just watched her, his old eyes as sharp as razors. "My son tells me you handled yourself well last night. You followed instructions and didn't panic." "I was terrified," Elena admitted. "But you didn't let the fear take over. That's the difference." He leaned back in his leather chair. "You've been in this house nearly a fortnight, long enough to see how we operate, long enough for you to make up your mind." "About what?" "Whether you're an asset to this family or a loose end we need to tie up." Vincent said it casually, as if he were discussing the weather instead of her potential execution. "Marcus argues you are an asset, that your connection to Adrian is a strength. Others see a liability that will bring us down." Elena's throat tightened. "And what do you think?" "I think you're far smarter than you let on. I think you've been watching, learning how to survive in a place that by all rights should have destroyed you by now." Vincent pushed a manila folder across the desk toward her. "Which is why this is your decision to make." Elena's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were legal documents and financial reports, a language she didn't speak. "Adrian left you everything," Vincent explained. "His shares in the business, his homes, his entire fortune. Legally, you are now one of the wealthiest women in this country." Elena's head snapped up. "I don't understand." "It's simple. You can take the money and disappear. We will give you a new name, a safe place to live, and you will never hear from us again." Vincent's face was unreadable. "Or you can stay. Claim this inheritance, take your place in this family, and help us clean up the mess Adrian's death created." "Why would you want me to stay?" "Because you're still Adrian's wife. That name carries influence with the old world families, our allies. They respect mourning. They respect the sanctity of marriage, even in death." Vincent's gaze flickered to Marcus, then back to her. "And because my son is convinced you can play the part of the grieving widow perfectly." Elena's heart hammered her ribs. Marcus was a statue of silence, jaw tight, hands locked behind his back. Was this his plan or his father's? "If I stay," Elena asked, choosing her words carefully, "what would I do?" "You would become part of the family machine, of the business. You'll learn our trade, be a face for the family, and help run the legitimate side of things. It means you stop being our prisoner and start being a player." Vincent's stare hardened. "But it also means you belong to us. For good. No second thoughts, no running when things get ugly. Once you're in this family, you're in for life. there are no exit doors. Elena looked at the papers. Freedom was sitting right there, typed and signed. Money, safety, a new life, away from all this violence and darkness. But a free life to do what? Go back to always looking over her shoulder? She had nothing, no one, and nowhere to run. Adrian's protection was the only reason she still drew breath. And a raw part of her had no desire to flee, to break the strange, searing connection she'd forged with Marcus. She wouldn't abandon the first place she had ever felt the weight of her own power, rather than the pull of a pawn's strings. "How long do I have?" she asked. 2 hours. Vincent stood, bringing the meeting to a close. "Choose wisely, Elena. There is no undoing this." A guard led her to her room, where Elena stared at the documents, her mind a storm of divergent futures. She could run, take the money, and vanish into a life of quiet safety. Or she could remain, claim a savage throne, and bind herself to a man who saw his own darkness but fought for his brother's light. Freedom or power, safety or purpose, escape or war. By the time Marcus entered her room that night, the choice was made. He didn't bother to knock, the turn of his key an assertion of ownership. Elena sat on the bed, papers arranged before her, and watched him lock the door. He looked even more wrecked than before. His eyes were shot with red, his body taut with a pain he fought to mask. His clothes were clean, but a dark line of blood was etched beneath one nail. "Have you decided?" he asked, his voice flat. Elena gathered the documents and held them out. "I'm staying." Marcus glared at the papers as if they were coiled snakes. "You should run. Take the money." "I'm done running." "I am staying, Marcus," she repeated, her tone hardening. "I'm taking Adrian's inheritance and my place in this family. I will not be locked away like a liability anymore." Marcus snatched the documents, throwing them on the dresser. "Do you have any idea what this means? This isn't some contract you can tear up. You're binding your life to us." "I did that the day I married Adrian." Elena stood, meeting his stare head-on. "The only difference is that now I am choosing it. You're choosing to paint a target on your back. You're choosing a world where you might wake up to a bullet." "I am choosing armor instead of exposure." She moved a step closer. "Last night you asked what else you could take from me. Today I'm taking something for myself. Control. The power to decide my own end, not let other men write it for me." A flicker of something crossed his face. Maybe respect, maybe just profound dread. "You think this cage gives you more control than freedom? Out there, I'm prey. Here, I'm a Varelli. That name is a weapon, and I will learn how to use it. Or it's the weapon that will kill you. Everything is a death sentence in the end." Elena held his gaze. "This way, I die fighting, not hiding." Marcus was silent, his eyes scanning her face, searching for any crack in her resolve. "You're absolutely sure about this? Then you learn the rules." He walked to the window, creating a distance she felt he desperately needed. "You are not Adrian's widow anymore. You are an asset. You are under Vincent's command, my command, the family's command. You will follow every order instantly. You will never question a command in front of others. You will make no decision that affects this family without permission. And you will never betray us, because if you do, I will kill you myself." The promise should have frozen her blood. Instead, it was the most truthful thing he had said. "I understand," Elena replied. "You'll be given a role in the legitimate businesses. Adrian was building a real estate division. You'll take it over, learn the assets, the ledgers. You will maintain the pristine surface that hides the rot below. A corner of his mouth ticked upward. Exactly. And where I live? You're moving to the main compound. A real room, not a cage, but you'll be guarded. You don't leave without my say-so and an escort until this is over. So I'm still a prisoner, just in a more gilded cage. Call it protective custody, Marcus shot back, turning to face her. There's something else. The kiss. It was a mistake. You said it was complicated. He dragged a hand down his face. I meant what I said about watching you, wanting you. An urge like that doesn't just switch off. Elena's heart started to hammer against her ribs. What are you trying to say? I'm saying there have to be lines. You are family now. It makes this even more impossible. Vincent can't know. No one can. If they sense anything between us, you become a weapon they can use against me. So it never happened. We act like nothing is there. Marcus's stare was a physical heat. Because there can't be. Not while you're my responsibility. Not while this family is ready to explode. Not while every enemy we have is looking for a hairline fracture. Elena closed the distance between them, leaving only inches of charged air. And when it's over, when the enemies are gone, what then? Marcus's jaw went rigid. We'll deal with that if we get there. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. His hand lifted, almost touching her, before it fell. I can't promise you anything but your life. Everything else is a question mark. I'm not asking for promises. Elena reached out, pressing his hand to her face, as she had done before. I'm asking for the truth. Do you want me here? Marcus drew a sharp breath. His thumb ghosted along her jawline, and in his gaze, Elena saw the war inside him. Duty versus desire, logic versus instinct, the killer he was made to be versus the man he was. Yes, he finally breathed, the word a confession torn from his soul. I want you to stay, even when I know I shouldn't. Even though it's selfish and reckless and will probably be the ruin of us both. Elena leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his palm. Then, I'm staying. We see the violent contradiction of Marcus then, as he pulls her into him with a force that steals her breath, his arms a willing prison. For one long, tense moment, they hang in that fragile space, two people caught in the gears of an impossible world, holding to the only real thing between them. Then the gears shift. He pulls back, his face a war of warring needs. Get your things together. You move to the new room at sunrise. She asks what he will do. I have my duties. I'm always on duty. He starts for the door, but pauses. Elena, this doesn't change anything. The line between us is still there. I know. And she did. She saw the shape of their prison perfectly. It didn't stop the ache. I'll be ready in the morning. He left without looking back, leaving Elena in the silence of her new reality. The new room was 3 times larger than her cell, with windows that faced the outside world and a bathroom that wasn't a concrete box. Her few belongings had been brought in, looking small and out of place among the rich furnishings. In the doorway stood Maria, the older woman from her wedding day. Miss Elena, I am Maria. I'm here to help you. Help me with what exactly? Whatever you need, your clothes, your schedule, helping you learn the ways of the house. Maria's face was kind, but her eyes were watchful. Mr. Vincent wants you to be comfortable. The word, comfortable, nearly made Elena laugh. Comfortable in a place where one side wanted her dead and the other saw her as a piece in a brutal game. I need clothes, she said, pushing the thought away. Things to work in, not gowns for a party. Of course, a tailor will come tomorrow. Maria hesitated. If I may say, miss, it is good to see you out of that room. Mr. Adrian would have wanted you to have some freedom. His name landed like a stone. Focused on surviving Marcus, she had let the memory of the man who started all of this go blurry. You knew him well? Elena asked. I have served this family for 30 years. I watched both boys grow into their roles. A faraway look clouded Maria's eyes. Mr. Adrian was the gentler one. He tried to find the good in people even when it wasn't there. Mr. Marcus was made of harder stone, but his loyalty to his brother was everything. He shows it in a strange way. Mr. Marcus cannot show his heart. His father taught him that feelings are a fatal weakness. In this world, to feel is to be a target. Maria pulled back the thick curtains, letting sunlight spill across the floor. But I have seen how he looks at you. It is the same way he looked at things he wanted desperately but believed he could never have. The air stalled in Elena's lungs. What did you mean by that? Nothing, miss, just the ramblings of an old woman. Maria's smile held a secret. Dinner is at 7. You're expected in the great hall. I will come for you. After she left, Elena took in her new cage. The wardrobe was a vast, hollow space, hungry for a story. The bathtub was built for 2. The bed, a silk-draped altar, was worth more than her old life's earnings. This was the fabric of her new reality. Opulence and danger, so intertwined she couldn't see the seams. Dinner was a silent battle. The hall, fit for 30, was set for only 5. Vincent commanded the head of the table, flanked by Marcus on his right and Elena on his left. 2 strangers sat across from them. Elena, this is James Caruso and Michael Romano, Vincent announced. They run our finances and our legitimate businesses. The men gave her nothing, their eyes performing a cold calculation of her worth, judging her as either a menace or a tool. Gentlemen, Elena murmured. Servants drifted like ghosts, placing the first course without a sound. The quiet was a physical force, broken only by silver scraping against porcelain. Finally, Vincent spoke. Elena has agreed to claim her inheritance by managing Adrian's property portfolio. Is that wise? Caruso asked, his voice flat but his gaze sharp. Given the market's current state? It is necessary, Marcus cut in before Vincent could speak. We need stability in our public ventures. The assets are legally Elena's. Her oversight is better than letting them rot. And her experience in property. Romano's question was a blade of insubordination. Elena set her fork down with quiet precision. None. That is why I will learn. I thought that was the function of accountants and lawyers, to advise those of us who lack your expertise. Romano's eyebrows shot up. A true smile flickered across Vincent's lips. She has a point, Vincent noted. Adrian knew nothing of real estate at the start. He learned. She will too. With respect, sir, Adrian was family. She is family now. Marcus's voice, cold enough to chill the air, sliced through the tension. She is a Varelli. This is over. Romano shut his mouth, but his resentment was a visible poison. Dinner continued with talk of affairs Elena didn't understand. She listened, piecing together Adrian's world. As the meal ended, Marcus stopped her with a hand on her arm. My office, 10 minutes. He was gone before she could answer. Elena found her way to his study, the room where he had first taken her lips, the city lights bleeding beyond the window as they had ignited. The space felt different, less a battleground and more a command center. Marcus was there, his desk covered in papers, a whiskey in his hand. He didn't look up. Lock the door. Elena did, the click of the mechanism sounding like a final verdict. Marcus finally met her gaze. Caruso and Romano don't trust you. They see an opportunist who trapped Adrian, now trying to burrow into the family. Are they wrong about the trapping? Yes. And what's your angle? He shrugged the query away. It doesn't matter. They will fight you on everything. They will question every choice. They'll watch every step, waiting to engineer your ruin so Vincent will discard you. So what's the plan? Stay a step ahead. Be smarter. Don't let them break you. Marcus drank. And trust no one. Only me and Vincent. Anyone else here would sell your life for pocket change. Elena moved to his desk. You included. To protect this family, I would burn you without a thought. Their eyes locked. But it would tear something from me, if that's any comfort. It isn't. No, I didn't think it would be. Marcus slid a heavy file across the wood. Adrian's full portfolio, 12 properties in the city, homes, shops, a hotel. The entire thing is worth around $40 million. He tapped it. Income, costs, tenants, it's all in here. You have 7 days to know it all and give Vincent a new strategy. Her fingers trembled as she took it. 7 days. This is the business. You don't get a second chance. He poured another drink and held it out. You'll need this. She took it, falling into the chair across from him, the whiskey's fire a small defense against the ice in her veins. A $40 million kingdom was now in her hands. She had 7 days to tame it, encircled by men praying for her failure, and Marcus, his face an impossible puzzle. I don't think I can do this, she admitted. You can, he said without pause, or you would already be dead. He leaned back, his posture like stone. Fear proves you're smart. Anger is a weapon. Use them. Let Caruso and Romano learn what happens when they underestimate you. How? Become more than they can imagine. Outthink them. Show them you are not just Adrian's widow. You are a Varelli, a name that carries power. He paused. And find me when you're trapped. I won't help, but I will give you the cold truth. She gazed at the dossier, a death warrant with a 7-day deadline. Prove your value or be cast out. She had survived worse. All right, she whispered. I'll do it. I knew you would. For a second, his expression softened. You should go. It's late and your clock is ticking. Elena stood, but hesitated. Marcus, thank you. For what? For believing in me, even if you won't say it. A flicker of some deep emotion crossed his face. If I did it, I'd have told Vincent to just pay you off. Now go before I change my mind about staying detached. She was out the door before he saw his words hit her. The next 5 days were a spiral into hell. Elena forgot what sleep was, buried under ledgers and deeds until the text became meaningless shapes. Maria brought meals that went untouched and endless coffee Elena drank on instinct, ignoring the woman's worried looks. She found Adrian was smarter than anyone knew. His holdings were in neighborhoods ready to explode with growth. The hotel was a gold mine. His commercial assets were perfectly built for cleaning money behind a legitimate face. But the empire had cracks. One building's tenants were on a rent strike. Another property had a structural defect that would cost a fortune to repair. While the hotel bled money from bad management, Elena was building a plan for its revival. Her projections were an homage to her father, creating a fierce strategy out of financial chaos. On the 6th day, Marcus appeared in her room. His sudden entry a violation. She looked up from her laptop, her eyes aching from the screen. He told her she looked like hell. She said the same of him. He was exhausted, every motion heavy with effort as he collapsed into a chair. His order was a single word: report. Elena simply turned the laptop, showing him everything. Marcus drank in the data in absolute silence, his face a carefully constructed mask. When she was done, the quiet in the room was deafening. "Well?" Elena finally asked. He started. "The apartment building. You'll negotiate with the strike leader, not evict him." "Exactly, their complaints are legitimate. Fix the problems and offer a fair rent, not Adrian's predatory rates. And I stop the revolt and keep the building full. It's an investment against lawsuits and vacancies." She met his gaze. "It also makes the family look like less of a predator." Marcus thought on it. A slow smile reshaped his entire face. "Vincent is going to be incredibly impressed." Relief flooded her. "Really?" "Without a doubt. It's smart, it's practical. It shows you're thinking about the entire game." He gained his feet. "Present it exactly like that tomorrow. When Caruso questions the cost, do not break. Stand your ground." "Will you be there?" "I will be in the room. I will not, however, interfere. This victory must be yours alone." Marcus turned to the door, then paused. "Elena, you have astounded me. I honestly never believed you had this in you." "You dared me to prove my worth." "So I am." "You are doing more than that." His eyes locked with hers. "You are claiming this territory as your own, not as a grieving widow, not as a terrified girl playing a part. You are making yourself a threat, a real one." That word, threat, should have been an insult. It landed instead like the highest form of commendation he could give. The next morning's meeting was a slaughter. Caruso attacked every number she put forward. Romano searched relentlessly for any flaw in her proposal. Vincent was a statue, watching the conflict unfold like his own private opera. Marcus leaned against the far wall, a silent specter. Yet Elena gave no ground, parrying every attack with cold, hard logic. When Caruso called her weak for her terms, she pinned him with a searing look. "Adrian built this for profit over time. Gouging tenants is a short-term game. My way is sustainable." The room fell into a heavy, complete silence. Vincent's raw laugh ripped through the quiet, a sound that seemed to surprise even himself. "I'll give her this. The woman has stones." "The math holds," Marcus added, his first words of the meeting. "Her logic is flawless. I say we approve the proposal and give her full operational authority." Caruso opened his mouth to object, but one sharp look from Vincent cut him off. "Done. Elena, I want reports weekly. Major moves still need my sign-off, or Marcus's, but the day-to-day is yours." Under the table, her hands shook, but her voice was solid steel. "Thank you." The meeting was over. As the others filed out, her eyes found Marcus's. The pride radiating from him was almost a physical force. She had done it. She had shattered their assumptions and carved out her place. Now came the harder part, holding it. For the next 2 weeks, the work was all-consuming. Elena met with building managers, walked the properties, and sat in on tenant meetings. The organizer, Sarah, was simply a tired but fierce protector of her people. Elena heard her out, and they found a middle ground. The hotel was a different beast. Its manager was skimming with ties to a rival crew. Elena presented her findings to Marcus, who handled it. The manager was gone. A new one was installed. Profits rose. A new story started making the rounds. Adrian's widow was no puppet. She was player. This reality should have made things easier, but it only made them more complicated. Marcus began to pull away. Their talks became clinical, briefings and signatures. He started avoiding her eyes, inventing reasons they could not be in a room alone. Elena told herself it was for security. The logic did little to ease the sting. The cold wall he was building felt like a sharp betrayal after the connection they had forged. 3 weeks after her triumph, a car slid to a stop beside her as she left the hotel. The window glided down, revealing a stranger. "Mrs. Varley, my employer wishes to speak with you." Her security team closed in on the car, hands moving to their weapons. The man offered a placid smile. "Unnecessary. This is a simple conversation. My employer has information about the attack on your wedding day. We thought you might be interested." Elena's pulse hammered. "Tell your employer to go through proper channels." "The proper channels are broken. That's part of the information." He held a business card out the window. "Tomorrow night. The location is on the card. Come alone if you want the truth about who killed Adrienne." The car sped off before she could answer. Her head of security took the card. "We need to tell Mr. Marcus about this now." But Elena's mind was a maelstrom. Information about Adrian's killer, about the traitor in their midst. It was either a perfectly crafted trap or the very break they needed. She took the card from his hand. "Let me think about this." That night, Marcus burst into her room without a knock. "What in the hell were you thinking?" He slammed a file onto her desk. "The security report. Some stranger dangles intel on a street corner and you don't think to mention it?" Elena stood, her own temper igniting. "I was going to." "When? After you went to this little secret meeting alone and got a bullet in your head? I'm not stupid enough to go by myself." "But you are stupid enough to think about it." He was angrier than she had ever witnessed. "This is exactly what I warned you about. They dangle the one thing you crave, answers, and you're ready to walk right into their cage. Or it's real, someone who actually knows who betrayed us." Elena grabbed the card from the desk. "You've found nothing for weeks. This could be it." "It's not an opportunity, it's bait." Marcus snatched the card from her hand. "And you are not taking it. You don't have the authority to order me around. If there are answers about Adrian, I will be the one to get them, not you." His jaw was granite. "You will not risk your life on the empty word of a stranger." "And why not? It's what you do every day." "That is different." "How?" Elena stepped toward him, her own rage peaking. "Because you're the seasoned killer, the muscle, and I'm just the widow who signs checks? Because my life means less?" The words were ripped from him, raw with a pain that shook the room. "My death means nothing. The business continues. Vincent finds a replacement. The world keeps turning, but if you died—" He choked on the very idea, his breath hitching. "If I die, what happens?" Elena pushed. "The assets shift. The family finds another puppet. So tell me, Marcus." "If you die," he whispered, "my world ends." The confession stole something vital from him. "And that is precisely why you can't go to this meeting. My job is to protect you, not to lead an assault. That path gets us both killed." All the fight went out of Elena. "I was wrong. I should have told you right away." Marcus slumped against the wall. "You need to know about Adrian, I get it, but this is not the way. Then what is? Let me handle this. I'll have the site swept for traps. If it's clean, we will set up a secure meeting." He finally looked at her, and the profound weariness in his eyes struck her like a physical blow. Just promise me you won't do anything foolish. I promise. Marcus nodded, turning to go. Wait, Elena said. You've been keeping me at arm's length. His hand froze on the doorknob. The workload has been insane. You've been avoiding me, she pressed. Ever since the presentation. Did I do something to offend you? You have done everything perfectly. That is the problem. Marcus faced her again. You were supposed to be a liability to manage, a problem to contain. Instead, you've become critical to the entire operation, which paints an even bigger target on your back. So this is the plan? Pretend I don't exist? I am protecting both of us by keeping this professional. But his eyes were telling a different story, one of a deep and aching need she felt mirrored in her own soul. She closed the distance between them. And what if I'm done with distance? Elena. What if the one thing I want more than anything is the one thing guaranteed to destroy us both? His composure was fracturing. She could see it in the tightening of his jaw, in the way his hands coiled into fists at his sides. You have no idea what you're asking for. Oh, but I do. I am asking for the truth, for you to see me as something other than breakable. I am asking for. And then his mouth was on hers. This was nothing like before. It was not a storm. It was an invasion. He cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheek before his mouth claimed hers with the devastating finality. Elena melted against him, her fingers clutching his shirt, pulling him closer still. Here was the deep bond she had craved, the unspoken promise that she was not facing this hell alone. Marcus broke the kiss, pressing his forehead to hers. This is an impossible idea. Utterly catastrophic, Elena breathed. We can't do this. We really can't, Elena. Her name was a plea, a surrender, a benediction. She dragged him back to her, and the second kiss was pure fire. A sudden rap on the door fractured the spell. Marcus jerked back, his features instantly freezing into the glacial defensive mask he wore like a second skin. Straightening his clothes, he strode to the window, feigning indifference. Come in, Elena managed, her voice trembling. Maria appeared with a supper tray. Your meal, miss. I thought you'd want it here, given the difficult day. Thank you, Maria. The maid set the tray down, her knowing glance flickering between the two of them. Will you be joining her, Mr. Marcus? No, I was just leaving. He wouldn't look at her. We'll discuss the security detail tomorrow. Then he was out, leaving Elena with a violent urge to throw something at the closed door. Maria began to set the meal upon the small table. He is fighting it with every part of his being, you understand. Elena went completely still. I have no idea to what you are referring. No, I am sure you do not. Maria's smile held a certain warmth. But if you did, you would notice Mr. Marcus has never watched anyone the way he watches you. Not in all my years of service here. I am an old woman. I see things. I also know when to keep my peace. She drifted toward the door. Just be careful, miss. In this place, every stare is noted, and not all are kind. The phantom touch of his kiss still burned on her lips. Her mind was a maelstrom of words left unsaid. It was forbidden. A catastrophic risk, the exact type of affair that ended in a body bag in their world. And still, it was real. The connection between them was the only truth in a life built of strategy and deception. Elena just toyed with her meal, wondering how to live, wanting the one person she could never possess. The next morning, a unit Marcus sent checked the address on the card. It was a corporate high-rise downtown, not the derelict warehouse expected for a trap. The business listed was a security firm with no obvious criminal ties. It might still be a facade, Marcus commented in the briefing, but a much more polished one than we usually face. So, what is our play? Elena asked. Vincent glanced up. We move forward with extreme caution. Marcus will attend with a full security team. You will stay here. But they requested me by name. That is precisely why you will not go. Vincent's tone left no room for debate. If their intel is good, they do not need you. And if it is a setup, we will not offer them their main objective. Elena wanted to protest, but his logic was ironclad. Fine, but I want a complete report. You will have it, Marcus promised her. That evening, Elena paced her room, feeling utterly caged while Marcus was gone. Her thoughts spun through a dozen terrible scenarios. An ambush, an assassination, a double cross. Each sound from the hall felt like a looming threat. He did not get back until long after midnight. He found her awake, fully clothed, sleep having been impossible. Well, she asked. Marcus poured himself a drink before answering. It was legitimate. In a way. Explain. The source is a breakaway faction from inside our own organization. Men loyal to Adrian who resent the new order since his death. They want to take over? No. They are selling intelligence for a price. Marcus took a slow drink. They identified the traitor, the one who fed Chen's people the information about the wedding. Who was it? Michael Romano, the family's legal advisor, the very man who had questioned her at her first official dinner. It should have been a shock, but it felt like it was always him. For what reason, she asked. Greed. Adrian was about to completely restructure the family's legal operations, which would have made Romano obsolete. So he went to Chen, promising to help remove Adrian for a new role. Marcus's face was a mask of cold rage. Now Chen is gone, but Romano remains in our house, peddling secrets to anyone who will pay. What is your plan? To do what must be done. Marcus put his glass down. There is another thing. This group, Adrian's men, they demand payment for the information. And what is that? Marcus looked her straight in the eye. They want you to have actual authority in this family. For Vincent to officially declare you Adrian's heir for more than just the money. They feel the family has no direction without Adrian, and they think you are its new guide. Elena collapsed into a chair. They know nothing about me. They know you have good judgment. They know you bargained with the tenant leader instead of just crushing her. They see you running clean businesses honorably. Marcus stepped closer. They think you can lead this family toward a future with less violence. That is preposterous. I have no power here. You have more than you think. You have Vincent's respect. And you have mine. Even Caruso admits you are capable. Marcus knelt before her. This faction is offering an alliance, support from our own side. In exchange, they want you to push for changes, for legitimate business, and a turn away from crime. What do I do? She wondered. He warned her, you must be incredibly careful. This is either your rise to power or an elaborate trap. His hand came to rest over hers. But if you desire this real power beyond just assets, this is the only path. You find your supporters. You make yourself so crucial, they cannot imagine the family operating without you. The immense weight of it settled on Elena. Romano is handled tomorrow night. Vincent wants a public display, a message to other potential traitors. Marcus's voice was empty of all feeling. "You do not need to be there. I have to." He withdrew his hand. "To have any real power here," Elena stated, "I need to know this life completely, especially its darkest parts." She held his gaze. "I need to witness what passes for justice in this world." For a long moment, Marcus simply studied her face. "You might not like what you discover." "I probably will not," she admitted, "but I must see it." The following night, the family gathered in a secret room of the estate. Not the great hall or Vincent's office, but a chamber Elena had never known. It was windowless, completely soundproof, with one chair bolted to the floor. Two men dragged Romano inside. He tried to keep his composure, but Elena saw the panic flare in his eyes when he saw Vincent waiting. "Michael?" Vincent's tone was dangerously calm. "You served this family for 12 years. You handled our legal matters with skill and care. I gave you my trust." "Sir, I am not sure what you were told." "Stop." The calm vanished. "We have statements from 4 different sources. We have the bank transfers showing Chen's payments. We have phone logs, texts. We have it all. All the blood left Romano's face. It was not personal. Adrian was going to ruin everything we built. Adrian was going to make us legitimate," Vincent corrected. "There is a great difference." He gave Marcus a small nod. As Marcus approached with a pistol, a sickening feeling coiled in Elena's gut. She had demanded to be here, to see this world. But the truth of it was a nightmare. "Wait." Elena's voice sliced through the tension. Every head snapped toward her. Marcus gave her a look that begged her to be quiet. "His punishment for Adrian's death needs to be public," she declared, her voice stronger than she felt. "The other families are circling. They sense weakness. They must see we handle our own traitors, that our house is strong." Vincent considered it. "You want to make a show. I want to send a message so clear that every rival in this city will understand it." Romano began to fight his restraints. "You can't do this. This is a private execution." "This is justice," Vincent replied with an icy smile. "And the girl is right. We need to make sure everyone knows the cost of betrayal. Marcus, set it up in 3 days. Send invitations to the other families, to all the key players. I want every one of them to see it." Marcus holstered his weapon. "It will be handled." They hauled Romano from the room, his screams fading down the hall. Soon, just Elena, Marcus, and Vincent were left. "That was a brilliant move," Vincent said to her. "Practical, merciless. Adrian was always too soft for things like that, but you see what must be done." A tide of disgust washed over Elena, but her expression was unreadable. "I see that power is the only thing this world understands." "Excellent. Then you are going to like the proposition I am about to make." Vincent settled back in his chair. "I am an old man, Elena. This life takes its toll. I have perhaps 5 good years left to lead this organization. Adrian was supposed to take my place, with Marcus as his right hand, but my son is gone. And Marcus." He glanced at his other son. "Marcus is a master of his work, but he is not meant to be the one in charge. He is the shadow in the night, not the man on the throne." Marcus's jaw went rigid, but he said nothing to dispute it. "I am offering you a position on the council," Vincent went on. "Real power. You will continue to grow the legitimate businesses, be our public front, and forge the connections we need in the clean world. Marcus will manage security and all necessary operations. The two of you together will guide this family into the new era. This is the moment of coronation, where the cold logic of dynastic power confronts Elena's inner turmoil. The proposal for her to replace Adrienne isn't just an offer, it's a condemnation of the old guard's weakness. Vincent argues that Adrienne had vision, but lacked the ruthlessness essential for command. He sees in Elena the rare fusion of strategic brilliance and brutal resolve. Vincent's exit is a tactical move, forcing Elena to face the man who engineered her rise, Marcus. Her accusation is a declaration, not a query, acknowledging the complex machinations that brought her to this point. Marcus's silence is an admission. He affirms she is no pawn, but a queen in her own right, one who possesses what the syndicate lacked: a strategic mind, a disarming exterior hiding a will of iron, and a diplomatic skill Adrienne's noted gentleness could never achieve. When pressed for his reasons, Marcus reveals a tangled mix of pragmatism and profound attachment. His core drive is survival, the liberty to be the enforcer he is without apology. Yet this is woven with a fiercely protective instinct to keep Elena in his orbit, safe from the syndicate's enemies who would target her as a weakness. He admits that isn't the whole story. His hand, gently holding her jaw, marks a shift from politics to intimacy. The true prize, he suggests, is their alliance, the possibility of building an empire as partners, and by doing so, settling the unspoken volatile contract between them. Elena's reply highlights the gulf between who she was and what she might become. The burden of her late husband's legitimate businesses is crushing. The idea of commanding a criminal enterprise feels like a descent into madness. The very air between them felt charged with the twisted paradox of their connection. Elena could already hear the whispers, the story that would paint her as a usurper, a black widow clawing her way to the top. Marcus waves this away as meaningless chatter. In their despotic reality, he argues, only one opinion matters: Vincent's. Everyone else will either kneel or be swept from the game. This is the simple, brutal truth of their world. Elena pushes for a label, for a name to put on their partnership. If she takes the throne, what are they? His hesitation is revealing before he gives the only answer their reality permits: a strategy of vigilance and restraint. They must be clever, giving their foes no leverage, while finally admitting the truth of their bond to each other. It's a hollow answer, she observes, to which he can only say it is all he has. He isn't offering a romance. He is making a knight's pledge, vowing to be her shield and her sword against all threats. He swears himself to her will, whether she chooses to rebuild the family's dominion or to methodically dismantle it into something legitimate. He would even help her, he promises, to demolish the very empire his father built. This is his reply to the silent question of what happens next. His allegiance belongs to her, not the organization. Whatever future she carves, he will be by her side. In return, Elena gives him a kiss that is more than passion. It is a raw transfer of every unvoiced fear, ruthless ambition, and terrifying certainty, a physical pact forged in the fire of their shared nightmare. When he asks for her decision after they part, her response is a carefully weighed maybe. This isn't doubt. It is a demand for a test case. Elena needs to discover if ordering the end of Romano's life is a cross she can actually bear. She has to feel the weight of this crown before she consents to wear it. He agrees without pause. In 3 days, the trial will give her the answer. The location, a warehouse owned by the Varelli, is a deliberate theater of dominance. Neutral territory to compel attendance. but secluded enough to maintain absolute command over the event. Elena's choice of dress is a calculated piece of theater. A severe black suit and austere hairstyle present her as a figure of both mourning and command, presiding over a funeral for the old way. The warehouse is staged like an amphitheater, with the leaders of the city's great crime families gathered as spectators for the grim spectacle. Romano kneels on a raised platform, the focus of this rite of judgment. Elena sits at the center of power, Vincent and Marcus at her sides, her tightly clasped hands the sole indicator of the storm inside her. Vincent stands, his voice ringing with formal condemnation. He names Romano's crime, betrayal that cost him his son, and reminds the assembly of the one unchangeable price for such treason under their laws. But before the sentence is passed, Vincent shifts to the gathering's real agenda, the unveiling of a new authority. He presents Elena not as a widow in grief, but as a vital asset now in command of Adrian's portfolio. From this moment on, he declares, her word will be the family's word on all legitimate business. A current of whispers passes through the room as the men reassess the game board, calculating this new player. At a low word from Marcus, Elena gets to her feet, her stare a direct challenge to the conclave of predators who controlled the city. Then Vincent plays his master card, announcing that this entire public display was her conception. He gives her full credit for the strategy, positioning her as the mind behind this powerful statement. The family has not just survived the recent blow, but has been reforged into something more dangerous. Romano's execution is thereby elevated from a mere act of vengeance to a declaration of her own emerging merciless power. As Marcus steps onto the platform and pulls his sidearm, Romano's muffled cries begin. Elena remains a statue, her eyes wide, forcing herself to watch the brutal price of the power she is being offered. The shot cracks through the silence, a sound of absolute finality. Romano crumples. This, she knows, is the cost of her potential crown. Not one person in the audience even flinches. To this audience, the killing was simply a grim matter of business. Marcus rejoins them with the detached calm of a man who just finished a routine chore, his expression a perfect blank. Vincent then offers the benediction, a cold warning that the spectacle should burn itself into the memory of any other potential traitor. The Varelli family's creed was unchanged. They shielded their own and destroyed their foes, but now did so with greater strength and resolve. The gathering breaks apart in a performance of politics as envoys from other syndicates rush to pledge their loyalty anew. Several approach Elena, offering condolences for Adrian that were nothing more than transparent political feelers. She played her part in the performance, a stark, empty understanding solidifying inside her. This was her new world, a brutal reality of ambition and violence hidden beneath expensive suits and careful words. Later, in the estate's silence, Marcus discovers her staring out into the night. When he asks how she is, her admission is brutal. She watched him kill a man, an execution she had effectively ordered, and her primary feeling was not revulsion, but relief that a problem was solved. He tries to frame it as practicality, the thinking of a realist, not a killer. But she counters with a humorless laugh, remarking on the profound change within her. A month ago, such an act would have broken her completely. Now her thoughts are already turning to how she can use this event to consolidate their position. What am I becoming? Is a question about her very soul in this new moral wasteland. Marcus moves closer, proposing a kinder view. She is a survivor, one who bends instead of breaking, resilient enough to exist in this life without sacrificing her spirit. His evidence is the fact she even asks. He suggests you don't lose your soul with the act itself, but when you cease to question it. You are only truly lost when you no longer wonder if you've crossed a line. But for all his words, Elena feels the undeniable pull of a conclusion already reached in the quiet depths of her own heart. I accept Vincent's offer, she declares, giving voice to the silent pact. Her role would be to shape the family's destiny. Within his hold, Marcus searches her gaze for a final truth, and she concedes her fear but not her will of iron. Her one condition is delivered not as a plea but as a decree for her coronation. They would be a single entity, a shared throne. The gleaming public image and the blood-soaked shadow work would be unified. Every decision would be a joint verdict. For her to bind herself to him, he must see her not as something to protect, but as his equal on the battlefield. Marcus weighs this revolution, this utter rewriting of their code, and he yields. He accepts the term partner, conceding that his strength will bow to her strategy in the wars to come. "And what of us?" she asks, her voice low, finally touching the unspoken treaty between their bodies. Marcus draws her closer, naming their connection a beautiful catastrophe, a risk he will no longer refuse. He wants it, and he wants her. She recognizes the political poison, the venomous whispers their intimacy will unleash. Let them, he breathes, his kiss a slow and binding oath. This is the act of a man who has lived a lifetime for his family, now claiming one thing for himself, merging the cold demands of duty with the heat of his own desire. The moment Elena answered his kiss, a tension she'd harbored for weeks started to slacken. Their circumstance was still treacherous, convoluted, and a monumental lapse in reason, yet it was real. In that instant, reality was the sole measure of worth. A sharp rap on the door shattered the space between them. "Miss Elena," Maria's voice called. "Mr. Vincent wishes to see you in his study." Marcus pulled back, his features hardening into a mask of disciplined composure. "I'll go with you." As they entered, the heavy scent of cigars permeated Vincent's study. The old patriarch seemed drained, yet triumphant. "Sit," he ordered. Elena obeyed. Marcus stood behind her chair, a silent, imposing guardian. "The other families were taken with tonight's performance," Vincent stated. "You left a powerful impression. Questions were asked about your long-term role here. I told them you are being cultivated for our legitimate businesses with great prospects." Elena leaned in. "And the outcome?" "They are watching, but they are not hostile. In this world, that is as good as a welcome." Vincent poured 3 glasses of whiskey and passed them around. "I am making your role official. You are now a fully recognized associate of this family. You'll be granted access to all financial records, a place at every strategic table, and your vote will hold the same authority as Marcus's." Elena took the offered glass, her hand shaking almost imperceptibly. "Thank you. Save your thanks. This role comes with a significant cost. You are now a public face, a mark. Our enemies will try to break you, buy you, or turn you against us. Every move you make now reflects on this family." "I understand." Vincent raised his glass. "To the future of the Varley family. May we have the fortitude to see it through." They drank, the spirit burning a hot trail down Elena's throat. Over the next 3 months, Elena grasped the true scope of her new power. The legal enterprises were just the facade. Underneath lay a web of ventures ranging from the morally gray to the overtly illegal, laundering money, running protection, and smuggling. She couldn't cut out the decay in one swift motion, but she initiated deliberate shifts, redirecting funds to clean investments that would one day replace the illicit money, and building relationships with people who could help them transition into legitimacy. The effort was a painstaking, slow process of reinvention, but she was achieving measurable results. Adrian's loyal men, those who had exposed Romano, became her foundation of influence. They helped her navigate the treacherous internal politics, fed her intelligence on new dangers, and supported her initiatives, even when they met with resistance. Marcus kept his promise to be a real partner. Their arguments were often volatile and intense, disputes over methods and long-term goals. Yet they always reached a conclusion, a common ground that balanced the need for security with the push for legitimacy. And in private, hidden from the family's ever-watchful gaze, they nurtured a connection that started to feel like an authentic bond. They stole hours for themselves in Marcus's office long after the house had gone quiet. They discovered peaceful mornings in Elena's suite before the day's turmoil erupted. They shared quick, secretive touches in hallways when they thought no one was watching. It was not a conventional life, it was never going to be, but it was theirs. 6 months after Adrian's passing, Vincent called another family meeting. "I am retiring," he announced without preamble. "My health is failing. I am handing daily control to Elena and Marcus. They will lead this family together. Elena will run the legitimate businesses and our public image. Marcus will handle security and internal order." The statement was met with a mix of responses. Some men acknowledged the news, as if expecting this transition. Others looked skeptical, but none spoke out. Vincent's word was still law. "Are there any questions?" Vincent asked. Caruso put up a hand. "What if there's a major disagreement? Who casts the deciding vote?" Vincent's eyes moved between Elena and Marcus. "They will figure it out. I won't be ruling from the sidelines." After the meeting, Elena found Marcus in the armory, methodically disassembling his weapons. "This is really happening," she said quietly. "It appears so." He didn't glance up from his work. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus set the firearm aside, his eyes finally finding hers. "Are you?" "I asked you first." The barest hint of a smile crossed his face. "I'm petrified. You've been here 6 months, and half the family already answers to you. I have been here my whole life, and I have never shouldered this kind of weight. We'll handle it. As a team, right?" Marcus stood and walked toward her. "Because we will eventually clash over something vital with no easy answer. What's the protocol then?" Elena had lost sleep over that very scenario. "Then we talk until we find a middle ground we can both live with. That is what a partnership is. And if we can't find one, then we flip a coin." She was only half joking. "Or we could trade off on who gets the final word, or bring in an arbiter. There are options that don't require us to burn it all down." Marcus pulled her into an embrace. "You're really committed to this, to us." "I am committed to creating something better than what we had. Whether that makes an us or just a partnership, we will figure that out as we go." Elena gazed up at him. "And you? Are you committed?" "To you?" "Yes, to this insane plan to reform a criminal empire from within." "It seems I am, yes." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I have to be going insane." "Probably." Elena smiled into his chest. "But at least we're going insane together." The next year tested them by fire. 2 more attacks on her life were thwarted by Marcus's protective measures. 3 hostile takeover attempts by rival families were defeated by Elena's strategic maneuvering and Marcus's brutal efficiency. A federal probe nearly ensnared senior members before Elena's legal counsel found a loophole that got it dismissed entirely. But they held on, and they did more than just hold on. They started to thrive. The property portfolio grew. Elena bought 3 new hotels and a small restaurant group, all running above board and turning a profit. This fresh income enabled her to dissolve 2 protection schemes and a smuggling ring, moving some men into legitimate jobs. For some, the transformation was excruciatingly slow. Adrian's old supporters wanted more drastic changes, but for the traditionalists, it was all happening much too fast. A number of the old guard opted to depart the family instead of adapt. Marcus was her rock through every storm, backing her choices in public while giving her the unvarnished truth in private about what was achievable versus what was a fantasy. He handled the men who needed a firm hand while she built the pathways that would lead them to legitimacy. They memorized each other's rhythms, their assets, and their deepest insecurities. They learned when to push and when to back down. They learned to fight without causing destruction and how to lift each other up without being patronizing. And somewhere in that trial, the careful space they kept between them started to evaporate. It began with little things. Marcus's hand on the small of her back in meetings. Elena learned to speak in quiet actions, a fleeting touch to his arm, a look held just a second too long. An unspoken dialogue was taking shape between them. Then one night, after an exceptionally draining negotiation, Marcus retreated to her room and simply never left. They didn't speak of it, never gave a name to what was unfolding. Their affair stayed in the shadows, painstakingly concealed. The danger of being discovered was a perpetual menace, but behind closed doors, they were building a connection that was perilously real. A year and a half after Adrian's passing, Vincent summoned Elena. The patriarch appeared fragile. The sickness he had hidden for so long was now winning. He was slumped in a chair, wrapped in a blanket despite the summer warmth. "Sit," he said, his voice a reedy whisper. "How are you feeling?" she inquired. "Like a dying man, which I am," he answered, a weak smile on his lips. "The doctors say I have 6 months, maybe less." A heaviness settled over Elena. Vincent had given her a real chance, championing her ideas for the family even when they clashed with his own lifelong practices. "I'm so sorry," she breathed. "Don't be," he stated. "I have survived longer than most men in our line of work, built a kingdom, and dodged more attempts on my life than I can count." He sought confirmation that the family's future was secure. "It will be. Marcus and I—" Vincent cut her off. "I know what the 2 of you are up to. Don't act shocked." It appeared he was not oblivious after all. "You believe you are being discreet, but Maria has been my eyes and ears for many years." Elena felt exposed. "Sir, Stop. Who you sleep with is of no concern to me, provided you lead my family well, and that you are doing." His eyes lock with hers. "This, however, requires your explicit consent. The matters of your heart are your own. I am speaking of rule. What he offers is a joint crown, a true alliance of equals." Vincent admits with raw honesty, "Adrian was the son I favored. Marcus knows this, but Marcus was bred for this life, and you are greater than both." In her, he sees Adrian's vision combined with Marcus's strength. With you together, this family can achieve legitimacy before it implodes. A tightness constricts Elena's chest. "What if we fail? Then the failure is yours alone." Should you fall, it will be in the name of progress, not in the service of my memory, Vincent stated, his hand closing firmly on hers. You make me proud, Elena. Adrian sought to be your rescuer, but you became our redemption. 21 days later, Vincent Varelli's life concludes without a struggle. His funeral is a magnificent display of power, gathering every notable family and an assembly of city officials. At the graveside, Elena and Marcus are an impenetrable front. Her clothing asserts her place as a Varelli, while Marcus is a pillar of self-command, his grief locked away. The wake that follows is held at their center of influence. A procession of mourners offers hollow sympathies, every eye probing for cracks in the new leadership now that the old lion is gone. Elena handles the charade perfectly, her graciousness a veneer for absolute control. But once the last guest is gone and the manor falls silent, she finds Marcus in the study. He sits in his father's chair, staring into nothing, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. Hey, she says, her voice a soft intrusion. He looks up, his eyes filled with a grief that sheds no tears. He's really gone, indeed. Elena perches on the desk's corner. How are you holding on? I am unmoored. He was a tyrant who shaped me into a man I loathe, Marcus admits, his voice empty. But he was still my father. Am I supposed to just take his place now? You aren't replacing him. We're creating something different, she insists, her hand covering his. Are we? He asks. Or are we just performing a better version of the same corrupt play? He gives voice to the single fear she has refused to confront. We are making changes, she argues, slow but real. 3 operations are shut down. 6 legitimate businesses are operational. We've forged new alliances. And I had 2 men killed on my order last month, Marcus counters, pulling his hand away. Don't paint this picture in softer colors, Elena. We are still killers, just in more expensive suits. So what's the other option? We surrender power. We just leave. I don't know what I want. He paces to the window. Vincent thought we could change this. What if he was wrong? What if this is all we can ever be? Then we make it a little less evil. And then a little less evil after that. We keep going until we build something we can be proud of. That could take a lifetime. Then it will take a lifetime. She makes him turn to face her. I didn't sign on for this because it was easy, Marcus. I signed on because it mattered. He studies her for a long, quiet moment before pulling her into an embrace, holding on like a man on a ledge. I love you, he breathes, the words a shock to them both. Everyone I love is eventually destroyed by this life. I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Yes, I can, because I made a conscious choice. I chose you. I chose this violent, messy world where we try to reform a criminal empire and love each other at the same time. She pulls back to look him in the eye. I am all in, Marcus. I have been since I told Vincent I wouldn't run. He kisses her then, and it isn't the same. This is a vow, not a plea. As they break apart, she leans her forehead against his. We're going to survive this. What makes you so sure? Because we are in this together, not alone. A faint smile appears on her face. And because your father believed in us, that has to count for something. A sound escapes Marcus that is half laugh, half sob. He'd probably hate what we are. The soft-hearted killer and the widow who wouldn't stay in her place. He'd be fascinated, Elena corrects, pulling him towards the desk. There's work to do. Just give me 1 minute. Take as long as you need. He collects himself, his face settling into a mask of quiet resolve. Okay, 5 years after Adrian's death, the Varelli dynasty is an entirely new animal. Of their 9 criminal enterprises, 7 have been dismantled and converted into lawful ventures. The final 2, gaming and high-stakes finance, are slated for total legitimacy within a 2-year window. The world is no less dangerous. Rivals are always circling. But the age of endless violence has passed. The fear Vincent spent so freely is being replaced with hard-won respect. Elena now manages the legitimate businesses with surgical focus, a public figure known for her ruthless bargaining and bold expansions. To be sure, rumors of her underworld ties never fade, but they are never proven. She joins charity boards and attends benefits, prying open doors that the Varelli name once sealed shut. Marcus has also transformed. He remains the protector, but his crew now diffuses threats without leaving bodies behind. He is, incredibly, a university student pursuing business and criminal justice. 1 year following Vincent's death, they took their relationship public. There would be no more secrets. The family was left with no choice but to accept it. Not one person spoke out, but the silent judgment was heavy in the air. Elena was a tempest, and Marcus was the live wire no one dared to cross. They escaped the city to a place not for living but for breathing, a sanctuary that was theirs alone, not the family's. And on a Saturday, 5 years and 3 months after Adrian became a memory, Marcus asked her to marry him. At sunrise, he held out a ring, his voice quiet. "Look, I understand what this is going to look like," he started. "The talk will be everywhere. Too soon for them and eternity for us. But I need this. I need you. I need to be done with this part of the waiting." Her eyes moved from the ring to his face, taking in the gravity of his words. 5 years, she said, the number itself feeling immense. The whispers will be a firestorm. That I moved on too fast, that I dishonored his memory, that I was with you, even when I was with him. Marcus's hand, holding the ring, shook just once. "Does what they think change what you know?" Adrian's ghost materialized in her thoughts, kind, gentle, dying in her arms. A life she could never restore. She had grieved for him, a constant presence in her heart. But the guilt had faded. Loving Marcus wasn't a betrayal of Adrian, it was a refusal to be a tombstone. "No," she whispered, "it changes nothing. Yes, I will marry you." The ring, a simple platinum and diamond band, slid on as if it were made for her. "Perfect," he murmured, bringing her into a kiss that sealed 1,000 silent promises. This was not her first time joining the Varelli family, but it was the first time by her own decision. This was not a deal for survival. It was an alliance forged in fire with a man who saw her own darkness and did not flinch. "We are absolutely insane," she said against his lips. A slight smile touched his. "We have always been insane. This just makes it official." 3 months on, they were married quietly at the estate, with only their most trusted allies as witnesses, a world away from the prying eyes and gilded cages of their past. 5 years later, Maria was at her side again, as if time had looped. This time, though, the hands adjusting the dress were steady. The woman in the mirror was not some frightened girl sold for protection, but a queen claiming a throne she had built herself. "You look happy," Maria noted softly. "I am," Elena confirmed, her eyes on her own reflection. The gown, a rich cream rather than pure white, felt like the truth. "Is this wrong?" she asked the empty room. "After all of it?" Maria's eyes grew moist. "Mr. Adrian, he would have wanted you to have this. He knew you didn't love him. He just wanted you to find someone you could. And I think Maria went on. He would be happy that it was Mr. Marcus. The service was a short, practical affair, presided over by a judge who had long been on their books. Elena's vows were not flowery words. They were anchors thrown deep into Marcus's gaze. His promises back were just as solid, a commitment to share the weight. Their kiss was not an ending, but the first line of a new, wild story. The garden party that followed had a warmth her first, cold wedding could never have imagined. The happiness was real, a rebellion against the suffocating performance of Vincent's rule. As dusk fell, Elena found a moment alone on a terrace, looking out over the fragile peace they had made. He found her there by the window, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What do you see?" he murmured. "The distance," she replied, leaning back into his strength. "The impossible chasm between then and now. 5 years ago, I stood in a ballroom as my husband bled out. Tonight, I am married to his brother, a queen in his empire." She took a breath. It has been a brutal climb. A flicker of old pain crossed her features. "I will always grieve for Adrian, that this was the cost." Turning to face him, her eyes met his. "But I don't regret this. Never us." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Nor I." They stood in silence, watching the party, haunted and consecrated by their survival. "So what is next?" Elena's question was a whisper against the darkness. "Now," he said, the ghost of a smile touching his mouth, "we build. We make our family name into something other than a curse." He went on, "Perhaps in time, we can even find a quiet life inside this broken world." "I would want that," she said, rising to kiss him, "but not yet. There is too much left to mend." "Always," Marcus agreed, his arms tightening around her, "but we mend it together." 10 years after Adrian's death, Elena Varley stood before the city council. She laid out a new future for its forgotten corners, affordable homes and centers for new work, a true path forward for the people left behind. Every last cent was clean, drawn from legitimate Varley businesses, free from the taint of their criminal past. The council's approval was absolute. Marcus waited for her outside, a silent, unmoving bastion of support. A decade had carved its truths into their faces, hardening some lines while softening others. But the thing between them, forged in loss and conflict, was unbreakable. The verdict was his only question. "Passed. We begin construction next month." She took his hand. "The Varley name is now building homes, not breaking them." A silent acknowledgement passed between them. Vincent would loathe this. Adrian would have loved it. Their drive back to the estate was filled with a deep and quiet peace they had paid for in blood. A new kind of silence had fallen over the estate, one with fewer armed men and shallower shadows. The old empire had been painstakingly dismantled, its rotten core replaced with a new foundation that could withstand the light. Ghosts remained, old rivals who only remembered the family's sins. But the change was undeniable. That night, beside Marcus, Elena's mind drifted back to the girl she was, arriving at this house in a tattered, bloodied wedding gown. A cornered animal who was certain her life was forfeit. But she hadn't just survived. She had conquered, transforming the world meant to be her cage into her own throne, building a future from the ruins worth dying for. "What are you smiling about?" Marcus murmured, his voice heavy with sleep. "Us," she breathed back. "That we won." "Won what?" "Everything." She shifted closer. "We brought down a corrupt kingdom and raised an honest one. We outlasted assassins, our enemies, and the law. From the ashes of what we were, we built something real. We were victorious. He held her tighter. Our victory is never finished, he corrected. Every day we wake up is a win. To our long win, then, she replied, sealing the promise with a kiss. Through the glass, the city spread out, a future waiting. The abyss that nearly consumed her 5 years before had not disappeared. It had become a feature of the landscape she now commanded. Now, though, she could walk within that darkness, bend it to her will, and wield it as a weapon rather than be consumed by it. She had finally become the creature Marcus had always seen, a force of nature in human skin. The game had changed entirely. She was no longer a pawn on the board, but a queen who had seized her own crown with intellect, courage, and a resolve that would never again bend. Where the old Varelli dynasty was built on violence, Elena's new reign was built on the foundation of her own will. This is the power that comes from writing your own fate. It wasn't the life she once wanted, but it was the one she had taken, fought for, and earned. And that difference was everything.
Life lesson. Trauma often disguises itself as loyalty, competence, or control. Viewed clinically, the central relationships in this story are built on trauma adaptation rather than emotional health. This is not an insult to the characters, it is the reason they are so believable. Each of them has learned to survive through distortion. Marcus presents as controlled, efficient, and ruthless. In psychiatric terms, he demonstrates classic trauma-conditioned hypervigilance. He scans constantly for threat, prefers dominance over uncertainty, and treats emotional attachment as operational risk. His need to control Elena's environment is not merely possessiveness. It is a maladaptive survival response shaped by repeated exposure to betrayal, violence, and loss. He believes that if he can control every variable, he can prevent another catastrophic death. That belief is psychologically understandable and emotionally devastating. Adrian represents a different trauma adaptation. He leans toward idealization and moral compensation. He wants to believe that kindness can offset structural evil. This often occurs in individuals raised inside violent systems who cannot fully rebel against them but still seek redemption through symbolic goodness. His marriage to Elena is not purely romantic, it is also reparative. He wants to undo inherited harm through personal gentleness. Unfortunately, private kindness cannot neutralize public danger. Elena's psychology is equally complex. Her early compliance is not weakness. It is adaptive submission, a common survival pattern in people exposed to chronic threat. Later, however, she shifts from reactive survival into strategic participation. That transition is significant. It indicates not merely resilience, but cognitive reorganization. She stops asking, who will save her, and begins asking, what position gives her leverage? The life lesson here is deeply uncomfortable. People often mistake trauma responses for personality. They call someone cold when that person is terrified. They call someone loyal when that person is bonded to danger. They call someone strong when that person has simply forgotten how to rest. This is why healing requires more than love or proximity. It requires awareness. A person cannot change what they continue to misname. Control is not always leadership. Sacrifice is not always virtue. Attachment is not always safety. Sometimes the mind learns to decorate its wounds and call them destiny.